Shut up, fool!
I never wipe my tears away. I'm not ashamed of them. I wear them proudly, like small, wet, salty badges of emotional truth.
That's me. I used to be a thespian. I used to be an actor. Wet, salty tears of emotional truth. Is that what he said? Something like that. Okay, we got to define woke before we go any further. I'm about to give a definition of woke that woke people will hate. And that's just the way it is. First of all, my opinion of woke people is very low. I do not like them. I'd rather be with anybody else, even a fundamentalist Christian. Okay, but let's define it. Woke people are usually those who are suffering from an illness that I call feel sorry forism. Woke people are often people who are followers of some type of critical theory, critical race theory, for example, who view life in terms of oppressors and the oppressed, the victims. Woke people tend to be very unhappy, sad, miserable people. Woke people tend to be female. I would say it's not insignificant. My guess is it's close to 60%. And I think the reason for that is because women, which is adult females, tend to be more emotional on things that tend to be negative, like oppression, than men. Oh, how are we all doing so far? Woke people listening. Are you triggered? Is the hair on your arms going up in a bad way? What else can I say about woke people? They tend to, because of this feel sorry forism, they tend to not look at the facts objectively. And I would say that people who are woke are in a cult. Not all of them, but a lot of them are in a cult. So now the question is, how do you deconvert the woke? Now, I have some experience in deconversions. I've done it myself. And according to the Home Office in Wichita, Kansas, I've been part of deconverting thousands of people over the years, online and in real life. So if you want a source for how to deconvert the woke, I am your source. I feel like Rush Limbaugh right now. Okay, so I just jotted down some tips here on how you deconvert the woke. Number one, and you can put your own opinions in the live stream chat, and maybe I'll read them. Number one, get them to laugh. Get them to not take themselves so seriously. Help them to see the good things in life. Get them to be happy. Tell jokes. I tell you, maybe this is why lesbians tend to be woke, is because they don't have a sense of humor. Number two, just offending people left and right. Another way to deconvert a woke person is to befriend them. I mean, real friends. Now, this is tough because if you have a severely handicapped woke person, they will not be your friend. It's very difficult. But in life, we work, we play. You're bound to run into someone as a woke person who's not woke, and you'll be friends with them. And then they're going to someday say something to you that you severely disagree with, but you like them. Number three, raise cognitive dissonance in them. So point out contradictions. This is not an order of importance, just random thoughts. So what's an example of raising cognitive dissonance in a woke person? Like, for example, if you're talking to a woke person who's a follower of certain versions of critical race theory, and they say that it's white supremacy that's causing oppression in the United States, and it's keeping people of color down, you bring up Asians. They hate that. They do. Number four. Oh, this is an important one, I think. Compare the woke cult with a cult they already hate. I remember a friend of mine doing this to me, and it deconverted me in seconds, in the sense that it changed my behavior. In seconds. It works that well. So how do you compare the woke cult to a cult they hate? Well, a lot of the woke people hate evangelical Christianity in the United States. I think that's pretty fair to say. So what comparisons can you give from the woke cult to, let's say, the evangelical Christianity cult? How about the controlling aspect? Many people have told me, and I've seen this with my own eyes, of very controlling pastors, elders, deacons, just people in the church, controlling who you talk with, who you date, even your job, your career choice. And then ask yourself, if you're in the woke cult, if that's happening there too, where people in your clique, people in your group, people in your woke community tell you, no, don't associate with that person. No, don't say this. You can very quickly see, I'm just like that cult that I hate. Or evangelical Christians will sometimes use certain words to purposely offend people who are in the out group, like you walk in darkness, you're a slave to your sin, you just want to sin, all that sort of thing. Ask yourself, if you're in the woke cult, do you do the same thing? Do you just flippantly use the word racism, homophobia, transphobia to separate yourself from the out group? So compare the woke people to another cult that they detest. And if you can do this successfully, they will change their behaviors in seconds. Number five. I'm not big on this one. Sometimes I am. Mock and ridicule. Sometimes it's very effective for, let's say, a moderate woke person to see a more radical woke person just lose it. In fact, here's an example. Let's see if I can bring this up here. It really does work to mock and ridicule. That's why so many atheists use it against Christians. This is just one I found quickly. Hang on. Let me do this a different way. I don't like shorts, but if you right-click on the screen and you can get and then copy the URL, it works better. Then you can rewind, fast forward. You're welcome. So if you're a woke person listening right now, as I defined earlier, ask yourself if you want to be associated with this.
I'm offended that our children are not receiving affordable gender reassignment surgery along with hormone blockers.
No.
And access to abortions. This alone is a threat to our democracy.
Never heard that before.
It just shows that you people do not care about our children, and that these are the same people who refuse to obey the science and get fully vaccinated. It's science, people. No. Science! No. Science!
Yeah. Now, if you're a woke person listening right now and you see that, you have to admit a few things to yourself, I think. Number one, this is not an effective way to change people's minds. Number two, people are going to write this person off as not even being capable of being objective at all. Probably can't hear, nothing will compute in their brain any arguments against what they're saying. I mean, this person here is incapable of rational dialogue in this state. And maybe if he calms down, give him a Bud Light, he'll calm down. I'm sure it only takes one. But yeah, mock and ridicule. I tell you, you can find a ton of those types of videos on TikTok. Number 6. I think this is my last one. Show videos of woke people doing harm. A lot of woke people will value themselves as being very compassionate and loving, but then show the more radical groups within their community beating up people, getting them bloody. Show the blood. This is why showing pictures of a fetus in the 3-month stage works perfectly for abortion, for arguments against abortion. Yes, it's an appeal to emotion, but gosh darn it, it works. You can't deny that, especially with today's ultrasounds and so forth. So you do this exact same thing with woke people and show that the things that they're upholding, love, acceptance, that they're actually causing people who disagree with them to bleed. Show that. And then maybe something kicks in their brain. I do think that for a lot of woke people, it's the whole issue is a sense of identity, and they don't have it. They're lacking identity in their lives. A lot of them have extreme guilt that they're not good enough, that they're not successful, that they're a loser. By the way, this is similar to evangelical Christianity, right? Using guilt as a tactic. So that they'll lash out and say, the reason why I have these negative feelings about myself, it's your fault, not mine. I wish there were studies done on this, but my intuitions tell me that besides most woke people being female, come from abused homes, abused relationships, addictions, former addict. Yeah, it's definitely guilt and shame based. Comparing it to evangelical Christianity again, the thing that keeps evangelical, conservative, fundamentalist Christians in that form of Christianity, what is it? Who knows? What keeps them in it? The two things that pop into my mind is the fear of hell and the promise of reward in heaven. And I would say woke, as I defined it earlier, if you came late, I defined it. Same thing. What is the fear in wokeness? In Christianity, it's hell. What is it in wokeness? It's that fascists will round up people and put them in jail or kill them. Or that slavery will come back to the United States. Or that Trump is the next Hitler, and if he ever is elected again, he will never relinquish his power. Fear, fear, fear. What's the reward? The reward in the woke cult is sense of community, a sense of that they're doing good in the world, a sense of that they're not losers, that they have value. This gets back to the identity problem. If you're raised in a good, stable home with some sense of tradition, my guess is your likeliness of being caught up in any cult, let alone the woke cult, will go way down. Not guaranteed, but it will. Yeah. What's the downside? What's the fear of the woke cult? It's excommunication, just like in evangelical Christianity. Well, Christianity in general is very biblical. If the member of the church sins, first the deacons approach, the elders approach, and ask for repentance, and if they still don't repent, they're excommunicated. This is very similar in the woke cult. If you say something or do something that's not in line with the decrees of, let's say, critical race theory or some other critical theory, if you don't buy into it, you will be excommunicated. And worse yet, you'll be called a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe. And even worse yet, you might be even called white, even if you're black. Not all Christianity is a cult, of course, man in charge. One could say a religion is just a successful cult, but I do, and I think any reasonable human being realizes that there are sects within Christianity and even Islam, definitely Islam, that are more dangerous than others, more controlling than others. So I'm talking about this type of wokeness that's very controlling, if you don't do X, you're out. You're no longer a part of us. If your silence is violence, that sort of thing, right? I tell you, if you're listening right now and one of your friends has said this to you, your silence is violence, you're probably in a cult. What other similarities to Christianity? Like tithing, donating to BLM, so a couple of people and their families can get wealthy. Donating to other green energy type stuff or whatever. Maybe that's going too far, but... Oh, what's some other rewards of the woke cult? Christianity is heaven. The woke cult has reparations. Hope for a big payout. Show me the money. I've always said that you can summarize critical race theory in 4 words. Show me the money. Nugalov, I defined wokeness earlier, my definition. So whenever I say woke, you have to rewind and say, this is what I mean by it. You don't have to agree with my definition. That's another thing. you know you're in a woke cult when you rather shut down dialogue than promote it. Like I for the life of me, I've never gotten that. How people will label someone as a racist, and then, okay, if they're racist, then you can't talk to them. You can't platform them. You can't. Where did that come from? I mean, if Hitler was alive today, I would beg him to come on my channel, not just for the views. I really want to pick his brain, what he was thinking. Who wouldn't want to do that? Tell me, Hitler. Help me understand. What were you thinking? Trying to take over the world, killing the Jews. Like, I want to hear it from your own mouth. I've read a little bit about what you were thinking, but... So the reason why I thought of this is because Peter Boghossian had a former woke cult member on, and she left. And so Peter was picking her brain on what exactly caused you to leave. And so I thought I would give this, show you guys this. If you haven't seen it, it's on Peter Boghossian's channel.
So thanks for having a conversation with me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yep. So you've talked a lot about leaving the social justice cult. What was that like? And tell me about that. What did you believe and what happened? And
where do I start? I didn't have a belief system when I entered college. I went to Duke University in the late 90s, and I was raised Southern Baptist, but I had rejected that over a period of a few years at like a science and math high school. And so anyway, at Duke, I started picking up this belief system, but at the time I didn't realize it was a belief system. And I was a biological anthropology major, but I minored in women's studies. So it's through my women's studies minor that I was taking a lot of these classes on critical race theory, queer theory, and even classes on porn, which my parents were like, what are you studying? we're, I remember taking a class on examining the heterosexist gaze in pornography and stuff like that. So it was through my minor that I was introduced to a lot of what I and a lot of people call social justice. But at the time, I thought it was just progressive.
Notice she said she came from a very conservative Baptist upbringing. I think this is another sign that you might be in the woke cult, is if you came from another cult. Not necessarily all the time, but I do think that wokeness, the way I defined it earlier, is prevalent in the United States right now because Christianity is going down. I truly believe this. Just look at some of the atheist YouTubers online today. Look at Matt Dillahunty. Even look at Rationality Rules. Look at genetically modified skeptics. I mean, the list goes on and on. When you leave a very, very fundamentalist type religion of like Christianity, there's a hole in your heart, in quotes, and it needs to be replaced. And I think a lot of these atheist YouTubers have chosen this woke ideology as a replacement because it makes them feel good. It gives them a bit of a dopamine hit. It's like, what's the purpose of life if we can't help the oppressed? I mean, I feel so good of the work I'm doing, helping the minorities, the blacks, the gays, the trans people. I mean, this is worth fighting for. It gives them a sense of purpose, right?
Progressivism.
But the problem with it is that if once you get so deep in this, this woke cult, it controls you. It prevents you from thinking objectively. Like if you cannot say something negative or push back against your own tribe, there's another red flag for you. If you're scared to say something where 9 out of 10 of your friends are going to be upset with you, that's a red flag. How I avoided this, probably the way I was raised. I had a good family. I had traditions. I know who I am. In general, if you want to be less likely to join any type of cult, you got to be a bit of a rebel. You basically got to say, you got to be prepared to say, I don't care if nobody loves me, I'm okay with that. There's very few people who can do that. Well, nobody's hyperbole, but if you're a needy person, you're more likely to join a cult. This is why there's Christians. You guys heard me say this many times on the other channel. The higher your need, the more likely you are to stay in Christianity. Because you need the community, you need your fear of death allayed. You need to go to heaven. You need to avoid hell. And if you leave Christianity, you manage to leave Christianity or Islam, but you're still at your core a needy person, hey, you've fallen into the hands of the woke cult, saying, hey, we're doing something really important here. Join us. We can change the world into this utopia. Join us. The water's warm.
And I was also a part of Amnesty International, and I went down to a conference where with other representatives from different colleges, where I learned for the first time one of the social justice redefinitions. That's where I learned racism equals prejudice plus power. And that started changing the way that I thought about everything. So I was in it. I ended up, now on the outside, looking back at that, it was a slow progression of picking up this whole belief system. And I was in it for about 20 years. I took it, when I left college, I took it with me into my career. I worked in entertainment, and I had friends my age who had picked it up in college and took it into their careers.
Oh yeah, you're more likely to get into the woke cult, I think, if you're artistic.
Media, social media companies.
What kinds of things did that ideology cause you to do?
Well, it caused me to perform a lot of intellectual, like mental gymnastics to try and make it make sense. So one of the things I think they do is they control people. This belief system controls people by controlling the way that we think. And the way it controls the way we think is it controls language. So that definition that I learned, for example, no, racism isn't what you thought it was. It's dependent on the race of the person and how much power they have. And so it was basically saying, racism is prejudice plus power. Therefore, it's impossible to be racist towards white people. And it's impossible for people of color to be racist because they don't have power as a group. It's collectivist. It looks at people as groups. So what it did was it got me to start trying to explain this to others. I was proselytizing. I was a total evangelist. I did this on feminist message boards, the Ms. Magazine forums.
Yeah, there's another example of how it's similar to a cult that they hate. Proselytization. It's the getting kids into it. Teaching at a very young age. If you're white, you have privilege.
Which don't exist anymore. There was an old...
And that your privilege causes the oppression of those who are not white. But what is white? We're not sure.
It doesn't exist anymore, but another forum called Chick Click, which was a site for women, but it became, with me and some of my fellow social justice evangelists, it became a total social justice site where we were just converting people. And so I went out and I talked about these things all the time with people, and, I learned the same definition for sexism, like, sexism is prejudice plus power. Therefore, it's impossible for me as a woman to be sexist.
Right.
And the way it changes you is over time. I think the people who are in it with good intent, they really believe this is a belief system about ending oppression and ending racism and sexism. And what's so evil about it is that it actually takes those good-hearted people and it turns them into foot soldiers for the very things they think they're fighting. So I'm out there in practice, if as a social justice person, if I'm disagreeing with you, Peter, and you say something that's against the ideology, I can easily say, well, you're a man.
Right.
You have more power than me. You need to check your male privilege. I can disregard your opinion entirely. It causes me to behave in a sexist way.
Okay, so
Yeah. The woke cult has this fascination with identity being your gender, your sex, your sexual proclivities or not. And I think that's horrible. I think your identity, and this is why a lot of woke people hate this, but your identity should be based on what you do, what you've accomplished, what you have achieved. But this is blasphemy to woke people. Because then basically you're judging those who have not achieved, not accomplished, as being less than. But the truth is, in our society, there's like this bell curve of when you're a baby, you haven't achieved much, you haven't accomplished much, and then by the time you hit 40, maybe 50, you're at your peak, and then you go back down. And I think for a lot of young people who get caught up in the woke cult, they just feel so bad about themselves that they haven't achieved much yet, and they're impatient. I think I'm not where I want to be. I'm not as successful as that person, so it can't be my fault. I can't just wait and be patient and keep working hard. Oh, working hard, that's racist. But anyhow, yeah, it must be someone else's fault that I haven't achieved, I haven't accomplished.
it caused you to disregard things people were saying.
Yes.
Did you do any mean stuff to people?
I don't recall doing mean stuff to people other than my aunt.
Your aunt.
My aunt is a very strong Southern Baptist Christian, so Southern, very opinionated and judgmental. She would be the first to agree with that. And so we had this letter writing war in college where she would be sending me letters about how I was going to hell, and I would write back about how she was part of the white supremacist patriarchy. So I was kind of...
There you go. Isn't it amazing? Comparing the woke cult to Christianity cult, you're going to hell because you've left our cult. Well, you're a racist and a homophobe and a bigot because you haven't joined our cult.
That's interesting, like dueling ideology.
Yes.
It's interesting.
But you know what I did that is mean, but with passivity, is I saw, like later on in it, once I'd left college and I was in my adult life and I was working in entertainment and I was whittling down my whole world to social justice people and excluding those who were not of my faith.
Excluding.
When I saw pylons and mobs happen, the one that stands out is Megan Murphy.
Oh, yeah.
I've since apologized to her. I didn't know her at the time. I knew who she was. And she was a prominent feminist in the third wave feminist movement I was in. And the feminists came for her because she was speaking out against gender ideology. Yeah. And there was a total mobbing that happened in my little corner of social justice with all the feminists I knew, people who worked at different organizations and magazines and popular feminist blogs, and some of whom I knew, and they completely ostracized her, canceled her, and I didn't say anything, even though I was conflicted deeply because I thought, well, what's wrong with her having a different opinion on this? But I was a coward and I didn't say anything.
Yeah, it's wrong to have different opinions because opinions, beliefs is what shape its actions. And actions lead to violence. So you can't even have bad thoughts. Here's another way you get people deconverted from the woke cult is compare it to Christianity and the thought crime. Jesus said, if you just think lustfully in your mind or in your heart, you've committed adultery. Well, the woke cult will say something similar. If you just think bad thoughts about a person of color, you're a racist. And that thought will lead to violence against people of color. And they'll say, oh, it always does. I mean, it always does. People cannot choose otherwise than what they think, right? Just like Jesus said, no, it always does. It's always adultery if you think lustfully in your heart. This is how you deconvert people from the woke cult. Compare it to a cult that they hate.
Okay, so there's just so much to unpack there, but I'm not going to unpack any of it.
Okay.
So how did you get out of the ideology? How did you escape?
Well, before I left, first of all, one interesting thing that I took it into my work. I was a producer on a late night comedy show called Totally Biased, which featured one of my comedy clients, and several of the writers were clients of mine. And
Oh, remember what I said earlier? I was just brainstorming. How do you get people out of the woke cult? Is you get them to laugh, get them to be happy. She was in the entertainment industry with comedians. I think there's something there.
the other executive producers was Chris Rock, who was not woke, but I was woke. My client, the host of the show, was woke, is woke. Several of the writers, most of the writers were woke. And so I wouldn't say that's something mean that I did, but I definitely helped to shape. We were sort of like the first woke late night show. Like all the late night shows have been liberal leaning, but this was the one that first one where we were explicitly bringing some of these ideas about like prejudice plus power and stuff into comedy. We were doing segments on whether or not a man can tell a rape joke, whether or not Apu is racist. And so we were really like pushing the belief system through comedy. I was a true believer during that period. What happened to me was with the election in 2016, I started seeing more and more of those things, like the pylon of Megan Murphy. Started seeing more of those things that were causing me internal conflict. And I went down a rabbit hole of videos on YouTube of people attacking Trump supporters physically. And I had never seen these videos. And I was shaken because it was like, but I thought that the Trump supporters were the violent ones. And then I tried to find videos of Trump supporters attacking Clinton supporters, and I couldn't find the same kind of videos.
Yeah, there's definitely violence on both sides of the political scale, but I actually think, in my opinion, that the violence coming from the left is more dangerous because it tends to be more emotional based. Like when someone is so emotional that they're out of control and they're not thinking clearly, I mean, that's really dangerous.
And it started to make me question, like, what do I actually know about this? It really shook me. It was emotional.
Okay, so you're undergoing this process. Did you say anything to Elle? Was this an internal monologue that you had, or did you talk to other people about it?
No, at first it was completely internal because you're also thinking, what's wrong with me?
Right.
And then around that same time, there was the shooting here in Texas, in Dallas, where the sniper killed some police officers at a Black Lives Matter rally.
Yeah.
And in my little social justice echo chamber online, like everyone I knew was social justice. I had done the cult thing and gotten rid of people who weren't. Everyone was kind of sort of tongue in cheek, like supporting it. On the one hand, they were trying to distance it from BLM, but also saying things like, well, some old white guys are going to have to die, right? Like kind of joking. And that bothered me. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these guys were just murdered.
But you didn't say anything.
Nope. I stayed quiet. And then I found a video of Jordan Peterson's. Someone had shared it with me, and they were talking about how he was a transphobe. And I went there and watched the video, and I didn't think he was transphobic. I was surprised. I thought I was going to agree with my friend. And instead it was like, oh, he's making a very good argument against compelled speech. And
yeah, that's number 7 on my list that I forgot. Part of the way I've helped deconvert a lot of Christians and Muslims over the years is saying things that they agree with. Like, they can disagree with me with 90% of the things I say, but that 10% is golden. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Pinecreek said that? I 100% agree with him here. That causes the person, the Christian or the Muslim, to listen a little bit more on the other things. So if you can find points of agreement with someone who's in the woke cult, it can be even minor, you're on the road of deconverting them.
I don't think he's transphobic. And so I started listening to some more of his videos, which helped me to understand what was going on inside of me. Like, I wasn't crazy. It wasn't just me. Because when you're in a cult, I think there are all these different psychological things that prevent you from leaving, especially if you've been in it for 2 decades. I didn't think. Like, I basically shut off my thinking brain. I used to be a voracious reader when I was a kid. When I was in woke, I just read the approved cult books. It's like, you don't...
Like, what'd you read?
The approved cult books. Yeah. If there might be some Christians listening to this, like, this is the list of books you can read. Don't go see R-rated movies. No, that's not approved. Don't read this. Don't see that.
Candy.
Bell hooks, or a lot of bell hooks. And you're sort of in this place of repeating mantras and repeating these phrases that you've learned, like check your privilege, stay in your lane, prejudice plus power. And you just, instead of, it feels like you're thinking, but you're really sorting through all these different.
The Lord will provide. Have faith. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, soul, and strength. Lean not on your own understanding. These mantras in evangelical Christianity and in the woke cult.
Things that you can throw back at people. You're not really thinking, and you're not reading anything outside of the cult. And so I had all these opinions. I heard Jordan Peterson talking about, hey, like one form of lying is to speak opinions that are not your own, that you've just received, and you haven't done the work to have those opinions. And that, I started thinking about that, and I'm like, I have all these opinions about different, about conservatives, about commentators, about the minimum wage, and I've never actually done the work to hold these opinions. So, you know, like I thought Steven Crowder is a second.
Yeah, just to believe the authorities above you. Well, so-and-so, who I respect, said this, so that's good enough for me.
This racist, you know, he's in the comedy world. That's where I worked in the comedy world. It's like, he's a misogynist, and I had never actually listened to him. And so
you formulated your opinions not on the basis of evidence.
Correct.
But you thought.
What's interesting is, like, I get this a lot from some people. But when people call me a racist, homophobe, transphobe, or whatever, I kind of like it because of what this lady is saying here. The reason why she deconverted from this woke cult is because people told her things about someone else. Then she listened for herself. You know, wait a minute. No, it's not like that. And so when people have this, I actually love it when people have this worst impression of me. Like they've been told I'm just terrible. I'm a terrible guy. And then one day they listen to me for 5 minutes and go, well, wait a minute. In other words, you set the bar so low that it's like easy to jump over it. And then they listen a little bit more. Wait a minute. I actually agree with Doug here. He's not, I mean, maybe he's a little racist, but he's not that bad. I'm a good racist.
Formulated your opinions on the basis of evidence.
Yes.
And what was the evidence that you thought you had for your opinions?
Looking back on it, it's really just what you have faith in and what you trust. I trusted the media that I consumed. I trusted my friends, the people in my belief system, and I trusted their opinions. And I wasn't cognizant of the fact that a lot of the media I was consuming was telling me what to think, not just giving me the facts. Like now I can look at this stuff much more easily and say, look, right there in the headline, it says, country star Jason Aldean's wife makes transphobic comments. And they're telling me it's transphobic. They're telling me that. That's their opinion. But in the past, I would read stuff like that and be like, wow, I can't believe she did that. You know, just like take it.
Okay, so you trusted.
Yeah, and see, I'm the type of personality type. My default position is that most media is trying to mislead me. So you got to cipher it out. You got to try to figure out what the real story is here and look at opposing viewpoints and so forth. But if you read a title of an article and you believe it, I mean, you're more likely to join a cult.
The media to tell you the truth. And that was your evidence. That and the women's studies class were your evidence. Did you ever think, at any point, I wonder if my confidence is justified? I mean, I wonder if I've extended the confidence I have beyond the warrant of my evidence. Like I have this much evidence, but I have this much confidence. Did that ever occur?
No, but let me tell you, Peter, what happens. And I suspect this is true with a lot of people in social justice. I felt confident, but deep inside, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And that's that cognitive dissonance, or that there's two different feelings, because I had a lot of background anxiety, a lot of background
anxiety about what?
Just general anxiety. And
I think this is another indication you might be in a woke cult if you're an anxious person in life. If you have fears, worries, anxieties, you're more likely to be a fundamentalist Christian, and you are more likely to be in the woke cult.
I had I still have a fear of public speaking, which is funny because I'm hosting the thing. I'm getting over it though. But I would have anxiety about talking to you, for example, or I think a lot of times it was because deep down I knew I wasn't able to argue to defend my position, to defend my opinions, but you're not really like cognizant of that on the upper level. You're just sort of like, no, I know, I'm very sure, I'm very confident, but you can't explain that.
Okay, this is important. So do you think that's one of the reasons why woke people won't have conversations, is because deep down, beneath all the smoke screen and everything, deep down, they either don't believe it or they don't believe it's capable of being rationally put forward and engaged?
Correct. They haven't done the work to hold those opinions, to say that they're their own, and they know deep down, they know they can't defend them, and they feel very uncomfortable being forced to do so. You know what? Here's one of the things I tell people who are in it, because I actually know a lot of people who've left now, and I still have. I have people who watch my podcast who one of them started off hate watching me. Now she's like a very good friend. She's more based than I am now. So I know people can leave it. I've left it. If they're in it, I say to them sometimes, I'll speak to them directly in the podcast, like, I know you have that deep down anxiety. And I'll tell you, when you leave, there's so much freedom in saying, I don't know everything, and I'm open to being wrong. And and also saying, I haven't done enough research to have an opinion on that yet. Like, people want me to talk about climate change sometimes. I'm like, I don't know enough about that.
Yeah, no, I hear that. Okay, I want to go into that, but before I go into that, when you were in woke, the cult of woke, when you were woke, you were editing Wikipedia, correct?
I did edit Wikipedia.
Tell me about that.
I'm going to skip ahead a bit here.
I'm trying to learn from your experience, and I want to learn a little bit more about other people who were woke, who are now unwoke, or anti-woke, or however you want to call it, who escaped the cult of woke. And what I want to do is find themes, emerging themes in those experiences, capture that somehow, and develop an intervention, a mass societal, if not civilizational intervention, to intervene in the cognitions and belief systems of all the people who are...
Here's an intervention for you, Peter Boghossian. You're not going to like it. A way to intervene and get people out of the woke cult is lead them back to Christianity. You're going to hate that solution. But although today there's a lot of woke Christians as well, so it's no guarantee.
Delusion.
Because this is an identity problem. These are people who don't know who they are. They're trying to find hope, meaning, and purpose. And they're doing it through this cult, this woke cult. And if you give them Christianity, that could replace it. Or give them Islam. Or, heaven forbid, I don't know. Maybe that would be another number 8 on the list. Find a replacement for them. I've always said that's not my job to find a replacement of hope, meaning, and purpose for people. If I was to start a new cult that's benign, I think I would start Spockism. You know, Spock from Star Trek? To be a little more dead inside. Rationality. Skepticism. Opposing views welcome. Opposing views encouraged. Tears, going crazy, violence, not encouraged. Be more dead inside. Be less human. Because being human's the problem, right? I mean, now the transhumanist folks are, hey, Doug said something I agree with. Yeah, that's like autism. No, it depends. I wouldn't say it's just like autism. But it's basically, I'm saying it in a very hyperbolic way. It's basically realizing that emotion and rationality often do not coincide well. And so when you get these feelings and emotions, realize you're not in a good spot to actually making good, objective, rational decisions. But in my new religion called Spockism, my new cult, I'll call it, of Spockism, I can say be more dead inside when it comes to figuring out what is true and what's not, trying to figure out what the facts are. But during Lion King musicals, during Broadway shows, while visiting Disneyland on a roller coaster, you can show all the emotion you want. That emotion should be expressed appropriately, especially if you're an adult. In fact, isn't that the definition of adult? Being able to express your emotions appropriately and not go have a tantrum at the age of 40, at the age of even 20. Let's leave the tantrums to the 5-year-olds, shall we?
Beliefs and slap everybody out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So are there commonalities among people? Was there like a trigger or something that got people out of the belief system?
Well, one thing is that, because I have people, my show is called Deprogrammed, like deprogramming from a cult. And I get a lot of,
Where can they find it, by the way?
you can find on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. But I get a lot of questions from people like this who are saying, hey, my girlfriend or my son, or, they're in woke. What articles can I give them? What can I show them? And I really think it's like the Jonathan Haidt book, The Righteous Mind, where in that book, he talks about how our minds are like a rider on an elephant.
Oh, yeah.
And the rider is the rational mind and the elephant's the emotional mind. And
Yes. Let me bring that picture up.
a rider on an elephant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is human nature. Our emotions, often our even intuitions, is what's guiding our direction in life. And then we got this little rationality, a little bit of logic up here, thinking we're controlling our emotions, but really it's our emotions controlling our thinking. This is what I mean by be a little less human. In other words, shrink the elephant, increase the man. I'm a speciesist. I'm against elephants. I like humans more than elephants, although elephants are pretty cool.
And the rider is the rational mind and the elephant's the emotional mind. And we all like to think our rider's in control when the elephant's in control, and a lot of the time. And then we sort of make decisions on an emotional level, and then we try and rationalize it backwards. I say that because nobody could have given me facts to change my mind.
Right.
The facts were important.
Right.
Eventually, the
Right.
facts were important.
Right.
But to get me to look at them,
The initial
it was
stage.
emotional. So
Yes, this is why. Okay, I'm gonna tear apart some of my fellow YouTubers who I like Paulogia, Myth Vision, other YouTube channels that facts. Oh, the Old Testament, the Torah was written by 4 different people, not Moses. Oh, the New Testament is taking themes and tropes from the Odyssey. This is useful later on, I think. But initially, you honestly think facts change people's minds? The science is in on this, I think. No. It doesn't initially. It has to be some type of disgust, some type of resonance to something you love. Not all the time, but often. Especially if you tend to be on the more emotional side. See, for me, it was the love of trying to figure out a puzzle. Like, why don't people believe like I believe? And then really trying to figure that problem out. And feeling ashamed if I couldn't. Like it was a pride thing. It was an emotional thing. Am I smart enough to do this? Maybe I'm not, but I'm going to try. So then I started actually talking to people, understanding why they don't believe in Christianity. And then that led to things like facts, arguments. But initially, no. It was more of a pride thing. So even like the Frank Turks of the world who say, you're an atheist because you just want to sin. He's not wrong. I don't believe sin exists because I don't believe God exists or any gods. But he's getting to the emotional part that you don't want to give up your lifestyle, or you want a lifestyle that your religion or cult says you can't have. He's not 100% wrong there. See, now, just the fact I said that, there might be a Christian who watches this on a replay someday who's a fan of Frank Turek, and now that atheist said something that I like. And that will start the process of them deconverting from Christianity.
So that rabbit hole I went down of YouTube videos of watching Trump supporters get beaten, like bloodied.
So something, and we're thinking out loud here. So if we're going to try to change the moral mind and snap people out of this mass delusion from which an astonishing number of people have suffered with inconceivable rapidity.
You know, okay, now, Peter, if you ever watch this, you know there's going to be some woke people who will watch this because you have the term woke cult in your title, as do I, or I have a woke person. You're basically calling them delusional, right? But maybe your target audience isn't woke people here. But you know how well that works for telling a Christian they're delusional or a Muslim? It doesn't work very well. In fact, it will probably strengthen them in their cult to call them delusional.
The way to do
and I'm sure Peter would never say that to a woke person's face, but maybe.
This, you think, one way is to potentially shock people emotionally by showing them videos of woke people doing deranged things.
That's one way. You can also, again, this is an emotional way, is just the way in which on my show, I think if people's minds are changed, if they come to my show hating me, like my friend, I'll use her as an example. She found me because I was at a protest and I was interviewed by the local news, and then I was canceled in my local town group in just a little north of Austin, where they were all like, look at this crazy bigoted white lady at the BLM rally. You know, they were hating on me. And so she found me and she said she came to my profile intending to hate on me. She was thoroughly in BLM and these other groups. And she said she started watching me and she realized that she kind of liked me. She was like, well, I like her dog and she has cute boots. And well, this is funny that she, you know, this funny thing she shared. And I became human to her.
Yes, and that was number 2 on my list. Make friends with people who disagree with you. Be human talk about things that have nothing to do with the cult that they're in or you're in. Talk about bowling, talk about sports, talk about I don't know what. Relate to people on a human level so they're more willing to engage with you. Okay, there's a great part in here where very quickly Peter asked her to role play back to the person she used to be when she was in the woke cult and asked some very simple questions, and like within 60 seconds I think she was stumped. Let's see here.
A role play. Okay. Let's do a little role play. I'm into role playing, but only in certain contexts. This is one of them. So let's say, and with Reed over there. Of
course, your curiosity.
No, it is already. Everyone thinks Reed and I are sleeping together. Okay. Okay. I totally gotta snap myself back. Okay, so let's do a little role play. So, you're going to be your old woke self, and I'm going to be me.
Oh my. Okay.
Can you do that? Are you uncomfortable doing that?
I think so. No, I think I can do that.
Okay, if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to do it.
No, let's do it.
Okay, so I'm curious. Thanks for talking to me. Do you ever have anxiety, like background anxiety about talking about race, gender, and sexuality, and things like that?
I wouldn't call it anxiety. I just don't want to waste time talking to people who are racist, sexist, homophobic.
So is the goal, so if you think it's a waste of time, you think that the dialogue itself won't change people's minds?
I think some people's minds are not open to change. People who are not open-minded.
Oh, are you open-minded? Is your mind open to change?
My mind's very open to change. I was raised Southern Baptist. I came to understand how misogynistic the church is, how much sexual abuse has happened in the church.
That's certainly true.
How many hypocrites there are.
That's also
who say they're Christians.
True. Yeah.
And I came from a very small town where everyone had the same belief system, and I left that.
So you escape one belief system. So is the goal to have more people who are woke?
Yeah, the goal is to have more people open their eyes to the way the world works.
Which is systemic oppression. But wouldn't the way to do that, or wouldn't a way to do that be to have conversations with people who are not woke?
It would be, but a lot of them are not interested in listening.
Are they interested in talking?
Yeah, they want to talk down. They want to tell you what to think.
Yeah.
I'm going to break character for a minute. This is really hard.
It's hard for you to...
Yeah, see, this is the problem. This is the internal contradiction within the woke cult. And Peter did this brilliantly. Is one of your goals to have more people be woke, awakened to the truth that you see? Well, yes, of course. But then you just said that you don't want to talk to the unwoke. So how would you convince someone to be more like you if you don't want to talk with them because you view them as a racist, homophobe, bigot, blah, 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 blah? Like, if you really want to make change, then you ought to target the people who are most dangerous, the most bigoted, the most racist, the most transphobes and homophobes. Those are the people you should talk to the most. But yet you say, as a woke person in a woke cult, I'm not going to waste my time with them. You see the cognitive dissonance you can build? Like, if your goal is just to convince those progressive Christians that Christianity is false, like, what good have you done? What you really want to do is go against those fundamentalist evangelical Christians, right? Those are the people you want to change. So those are the people you need to talk to, right? There's some woke cultist people here listening who will listen to this either now or on the replay and go, sheesh, it's got a point. But yet, who are the people canceling who? Canceling in quotes, whatever that means.
Go back and think like that?
Yeah, to try and think like how I thought about things back then. I also was probably an anomaly because I did talk to people who disagreed sometimes. Like I said, I was an evangelist.
Yeah.
So I was one of the ones that Brett Weinstein would call the useful tools.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah, it's a slim minority, right? Yeah.
I would go in and I would try and make it make intellectual sense. And I would sort of be the good cop. There would be the bad cops and I would be one of the good cops. Right. It's like, look, I know that you can't see your white privilege, but, you know, it took me a while to see mine. And, you know, I kind of do that good cop thing with people. And so sometimes I did talk to people who disagreed. It just depends. I don't know. It's hard to do the role playing though now. Like,
yeah, because why? Because you can't put yourself back in that position.
Yeah, I just have to think for a second about like what I would have said back then. But yeah, I unfriended a lot of people who, you know, I got to that stage of it. I think it gets progressively worse the longer you're in it, where you become more and more closed off to people and you become less likely over time. I probably became less likely to talk to people who disagreed. At the beginning, I was more open to that. But by the end, you really just, by the 2 decades in it, it's just the people in your world. And you're like, I'm not going to give that person the time of day because they're...
And at that point, you must think that the beliefs you hold are absolutely true because you've buttressed them from any, not even substantive criticism, but any criticism at all.
Yeah.
And it's normative and everybody believes it.
Right. A lot of people cut family members.
Yeah, which goes against what she said earlier, like that she's open to change, open to have her beliefs revised. But yet once you stop people who criticize you from engaging with you, you're saying, well, I'm right, and there's no chance I'm wrong. Now, as a YouTube creator, I tell you, there's definitely people I've given up on because you just can't have a civil dialogue with them. But the people who are civil, who actually want to have a civil dialogue, yeah, that's what you want. I would prefer if my channel on the other channel is 70-80% atheist, 20-30% or theist. I would love if that was inverted as an atheist. I would want the vast majority of people that disagree with me and to watch my content and come on my show and talk about it in a civil way. Like, so many times you see atheist channels, just 80-90% atheists, just justifying their atheism or whatever. I mean, I guess it's okay, but shouldn't the goal be the opposite? I think I'll leave it there. Jefferson Spatchcock, what is the woke cult? You got to rewind. That's the first thing I talked about when I started this live stream. I was thinking of maybe playing this, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go there. Maybe I should just stop it here. Save this for another day. And open my... Jefferson, if you want to come on, I can tell you what a woke cult was. Yeah. Do you want to come on, Jefferson? I came on your show. You should come on mine. Fair is fair, right? The way you do it is just click on this link that I'm about to post. Oh, I got someone waiting already. Another liberal. Hang on. Let me pin this. Hey, it's my good friend, another liberal with a nice silky voice.
Well, oh wow! I'm sorry to disappoint that I'm not Jefferson. Let me make sure I've got your live stream paused.
Well, he never said yes, but maybe he will.
Awesome. Well, I'm ready to push back on everything you've just said.
Oh,
everything.
Great!
Yeah, fun.
What do you want to push back on first? Well, it's up to you. You're the pusher.
Notes. I was taking notes as a good liberal does, and so I wrote down. She said racism is power plus prejudice, and so my question to that is, when is racism harmful? Most harmful? Like when are people most harmed by racism? Because I think anyone can be
when
racist,
they're killed
honestly.
by it.
Yeah, that's perfect. I like that. And
simple guy.
do you know of the young boy who was killed? The young black boy who was killed? Sorry. Wait.
I'm laughing that
sorry.
I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because do you know about the black boy?
Well, yeah, there's a lot. Well,
there's a lot of
so
people
many.
killed.
That's because there was Emmett Till, to go back in history, 1955, and Emmett Till was killed for looking at a woman. And you can go a little further to present time, where there was a young boy out with a play gun.
I want to be perfectly clear.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to be perfectly clear. I'm against killing young black boys for looking at white women.
Of course, yeah, and I think
we think we're all agreed here, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think the most dangerous racism is that which leads to the death of individials. But I want you can push back against me now. Push back against me, and I do.
Well, I just maybe will ask you some questions like. Did you hear me define what a woke cult was earlier? Like the first thing I did?
I think so. It was earlier on. I heard most of the stream. Do you want to define it again?
Sure. And this is for Jefferson Spatchcock as well. So I define wokeness as, number one, something that I find disgusting. But it's people who suffer from a mental disease called feel-sorry-for-ism. So their compassion is very high, their sympathy is very high, which is not necessarily all the time bad, but when it can overtake, when your emotions can overtake your rationality, it can be very bad. Do you agree with that, by the way? That when you're very emotional, when you're full of compassion, that you tend to make less reasonable, objective decisions.
Yes, because I think when you have no compassion, let's say you have no compassion, it's easy to be standardized across all decisions. Like you don't start to bend the rules. You don't start to make exceptions. And I think you and I might be a little too different here. I'm a softie, and my kids are going to grow up to be horrible human beings. But that's a joke.
But, hey, hang on a second. Nathan wants in. Nathan, do you want to wait or do you want to come in now? Let me know in the live stream.
Nathan's not going to wrestle me. I'm cool with that.
You know Nathan?
Yeah. No, DigitalGnosis.
Yeah, I'll let him decide if he wants to share. If he wants to share me, or
I'll run away if needed.
No, I'm okay with a threesome, but but I need his consent first. But anyhow, let me finish defining. I haven't really defined what woke is. So basically, it's people who follow certain types of critical theory, like critical race theory and so forth, who tend to view life as a system of oppressors and the oppressed and victims, and another key component of woke people is that identity is being a man, being a woman, wanting to sleep with women or wanting to sleep with men, that's their identity. Or I'm handicapped, or I'm black, or I'm whatever, Asian. So, and that based on those categories, there's different levels of victimhood, and that basically being white's evil. How am I doing so far? Do you agree, disagree with any of that?
I took some notes. Governed by feelings, feel there's a system of oppression, talk about a system of oppression. Identity is very important. Categories of victimhood within this series of oppression.
Yeah, I'm going to let Nathan. I'm going to let Nathan in now, but I have to change the room size, so I might lose you, but you should come right back. Let's see here. Yeah. 3, 2, 1. There we go. You're back, right?
Yeah, and I'll comment on that really quickly, and then Nathan has thoughts too. But I think the problem we can get into here with this is that we both agree there are oppressed people. Like, some people are literally oppressed by the system. Like, let's take child workers, which we shouldn't have in America, but we still got problems with. So
child workers?
Yeah, literally, they're finding incidents of, like, there was like a 12-year-old working at McDonald's recently.
See, I have no problem with that.
I'm against child labor.
So, I'm for child labor.
Well, do you think 9-year-olds should be working in factories?
No.
Okay, well then we might have some agreement.
But I do think 12-year-olds could work at McDonald's, like washing the floor and stuff.
That gets into I think I had my first job back when I was 14, but anyways, the broader discussion.
I was driving tractors and trucks by age 9. I mean, I was bringing in the barley and the corn.
I'll let Nathan speak after this, but I want to say one positive thing. Did you see the little kid who saved his school bus? There was a little kid on the school bus, and the bus driver passed out, and this like 10, 11-year-old kid ran up, stopped the school bus, and I watched one of the interviews, and the dad was like, well, maybe I kind of showed him how to drive a car, and the kid's like smiling, the dad's smiling, and
that's what that kid didn't do. The kid didn't say, well, I'm not part of the union, I'm against child labor, so I'm not going to stop this bus.
Well, I'm going to let Nathan comment on what he's hearing. And
you can stay. We can have a threesome.
I was going to mention something slightly different. So say if you don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but obviously I'm in London and I met up with Reed and Peter Boghossian on Friday and talked to Peter and one of the guests he's been interviewing. So I was going to talk about that. But if you want to
381 2.
Your audio is pretty echoey. And are you on a train?
Okay. I'm on a bus. Give me like 5 minutes left and I can rejoin and talk about that.
Okay, yeah. Why don't you come back in 5? Okay.
Was he saying he met up with Peter Boghossian?
Yeah, Peter and Reed are in London right now.
Wow. Fun stuff. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And actually, Peter is being interviewed by John Cleese.
Oh, the Monty Python guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah, off the top of my head. That's really well. So, here's a problem. I think the term wokeness is being co-opted by politicians to just talk about anything they hate. I think you've got real problems right here. I think we need some rationale to govern our decisions. We don't need to be governed completely by decisions. I agree with you there. I think everyone can't think they're oppressed, and you can't blame everything on oppression, but oppression does exist. I think there are categories of victimhood.
Do you think systemic oppression exists today?
There's less, but I think it still exists.
Can you give me, what's your best example of systemic oppression today?
I would say the criminal justice system.
You got to be more specific.
Like when you look at drug laws, like let's look at crack cocaine laws or cocaine laws, where people can be caught with basically the same drug, but then because we have certain groups having this drug on them more often, they're going to get harsher penalties and be in the system more.
Okay, and you think that they're being oppressed because they're being forced to take these drugs?
No, I just think it should be, I think when you talk about categories of victimhood, I don't think someone who makes the decision to have drugs on them, we could get into drug laws, but I think the penalty should be equal. So let's say you're caught with 20 grams of cocaine or 20 grams of crack. That's 20 grams of drug. So why should someone get a harsher penalty because the drug is in like a different form?
Okay, well, nicotine's a drug. What if I had 20 grams of nicotine? Should I get the same sentence?
Well, there's nothing illegal in nicotine. The drug still has the same illegal components of
okay,
crack.
But would you... I don't know how much I want to get into the rabbit hole of this, but I mean, some drugs are worse than others.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And
that's a whole nother politics talk.
Yeah.
I could come up with another.
But how is this systemic oppression? Like
that we have a system in the United States that perpetuates a group being oppressed.
What group?
People who are more likely to grow up in areas that have those drugs.
To have those drugs.
Like if you grow up in an area that has more access to that drugs, you are more likely to be around that drug, come in contact. Maybe you're a 15-year-old, you're hanging out with your friends.
See,
someone has
this is the difference between, I think, a liberal and a conservative on this issue, is because I made this analogy the other day that if I hated the Jews and I wanted to destroy them, I would flood their streets with fentanyl, cocaine, crack, whatever. And guess what? My bet is it wouldn't have any effect. I would fail in my goal because I think their culture would be not 100%, but very much immune to that. Same with Asians. I could flood Chinatown with a drug and just like, let's get rid of those Asians. Guess what? They wouldn't take the bait.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the oppression in the United States comes from historic oppression. Like when you look at, people getting an education for the first time in their family, then you are more likely, I assume your parents, no, you're a farm boy.
Yeah.
Did your parents go to college?
My dad discouraged me from getting higher education. True story.
Well, congratulations. Good for you for...
and that's why I got higher education. Reverse psychology. It worked.
Oh, I did want to tell you, I looked into Carrie is her name, did a little fact checking on her, and she's a Christian again. She goes on to talk about that. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was trying to read up on her. Pretty interesting, and this is a good stream, and I hope you keep finding my conversations interesting. So, but
did you like my would you consider yourself woke?
No, because
why not?
Because there's TV shows on being woke. I don't like the term. I think I would like to consider myself rational, but I know when you said governed by emotions, I know that might be one of my faults, or it's one of my good things.
But do you think there's systemic racism today? Do you think that a lot of the inequality in the United States can be termed as oppressor and victims?
What percent? Maybe 20%. I'm just throwing a number. Like when you say a lot, I wouldn't say the majority, but there's a lot of inequality just due to money. Like it's very hard for people to make it nowadays, making even 20, 30,000, where if 20 years ago you're making 30,000, you could probably support a kid. And
I disagree with you there too. I think if you follow Doug's simple rules of life, it's very easy to make 30,000 a year.
And support yourself?
Well,
in a family?
No, definitely not a family. But you're stupid if you make 30,000 a year and you have a family. You're stupid.
But isn't that then privileged to be able to have a family?
Yes. Yeah. To have a family is a privilege.
Okay. Yeah. So some people have more privilege than others.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Now we're talking liberals here.
But the thing is, where does privilege come from?
Comes from inequality, where some people have more than others.
Oh, see this? I'm going to get you on this one.
Okay, keep going.
Do you think, for example, why would a police officer stop a black person on the road more frequently than a white person?
You asked why?
Yeah, what's the reasoning?
They might think they have more reason. That's the reason why. They might think.
But what's that reason?
I would say prejudice.
Well, why is there that prejudice?
because they're looking at an individual, assigning them to be part of a group, and then looking at the history of that
But
group.
why are they prejudiced against that particular group?
Well, because
I'm going to get you to say something you don't want to say.
Yeah, no, I am choosing my words carefully. You are correct. You're listening to me. Yeah. I think what they're doing is, and I think that's what racism is. Like, I think I'm talking about racism is when you look at someone and you say, I've seen 2% of people have this group have this issue, and I've seen only 0.1% of this group have this issue. That person would be more likely to have the issue.
Right.
But the thing
Probabilities.
is that is racism.
What? That's racism? To use probabilities?
Racism is not stating a fact that blank group has blank probabilities. That's not racism. Acting on it or assuming things about individuals would be racism. Like if you look at someone and you're like,
Right.
I should pull them over and check for drugs, like whatever group they are, like they're in blank group and you're like, I should pull them over and check for drugs, and you don't have cause or reason, you were just racist.
Right. I agree that you should look at each individual on their own merit. But I do think that you can say that, well, their reasoning behind, the rationale behind a police officer pulling over a black person over a white person would be because historically black people have committed more crime in the United States, certain crimes, than white people. Is that true or false?
But that's nothing about that individual.
Correct.
Can I tell you a really quick story? It'll be 30 seconds.
Sure.
Okay. So the first time I really saw racism, and I'm lucky I saw it at, well, first time I remember seeing it was at probably about the age 15. And we went through Taco Bell, and they got the order wrong. And I was hanging out with my friend and his grandfather. And the grandfather used words, which I'm not going to say here, to describe the person and their actions. And my jaw just hit the ground because I'd heard of people using that word, but never heard them use it.
Yeah.
Then the manager came over and fixed the order. And he said, that's one of the good ones or something. And I was like, and the idea that he is, like, I understand it now as an older age, like he's kind of generalizing his views to all individuals in that group. But when you meet someone, you shouldn't bring any preconceived notions to who that person is, as a cop should not look at you on the road and have preconceived
I agree.
notions about you.
Yeah, we're 100% agreed on this. But here's the thing. As a father, I have black children. Did you know that?
Yeah, no, I've heard you talk about your wife and your kids, and yeah.
The goal for me as a father is to have anybody call my son the N-word and he say, doesn't faze me. That is the point you should get to as being a parent. To train your children that people can hurl words at you and you just go, doesn't faze, doesn't make a dent, because I know who I am. You don't know who I am. I know who I am.
I think the fear is among liberals and, well, just among people, is when words turn to actions. Like, I know someone who was literally told, like, sexism was another thing she brought up. We got another one here. Ooh, who's that? Oh, it's Nathan.
Yeah.
So here's my last point, then Nathan can take over. I was told by someone. I was told by someone I know that they found out someone they were working with was making more money than them, and they had to like go and do stuff, and the person was making, this is a while ago, so it was like they were making 40 and the person was making 43,000. And so they go to their manager and they say, why is Joe making more than me? And the manager says, he's a guy, he can do more. And that was their excuse.
Depends on he could be correct depending on the job.
Well, they were doing the exact same stuff and she had been there longer. Like they had the same tasks, and it was a Christian company, interestingly enough. And so the problem here is when words, like those words, whatever, people are not going to hurt you with their words.
See, but here's the difference between a liberal and a conservative, I think. I'm glad you brought up this story, because you listen to that, you automatically think sexism, right?
Well, why was he paid more? I do think.
See,
yes.
but I listen to that and I say, he could be right. Now, you say that, well, they're doing the exact same job. You're assuming that. They could have the same job title, but he might actually be more productive than her.
She had been there longer, and they were really sad.
See, there's another difference between a liberal and conservative. I don't care how long. Someone who can work a job for 20 years and someone can come in for 6 months and be more productive and do it better. Yes?
Yes, that is a fact.
Right. It's not a fact. It's just a possibility or it can happen. And so when someone, like, I think a lot of liberals like yourself, or no, I shouldn't say liberals, people on the left, woke people, will automatically assume sexism when in fact it could be a true state of the world.
Well, I'll give you this. How about this? I will say my last thing here before Nathan takes over. It is possible there was a reason outside of sexism, but can I get you to say it was possibly sexism?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Cool.
The boss could just literally hate women and think they're a waste of time, and he just did it because his wife wanted him to hire this woman. I don't know. That could be possible too.
Yeah.
But I think that there is this propensity from a lot of people on the left that if you can possibly see sexism, then it's there. If you can possibly see racism, then it's there.
Well, I mean, you've been around this world longer than I have. You might remember they didn't used to give credit cards to women.
That's probably wise.
I've known some men who spent themselves more.
Well, it depends if you have the shopping gene or not.
But if a woman has a job or whatever, like let's say credit cards have standards, right? Like you shouldn't give a credit card to a 10-year-old because they don't got a job. No, what have I done? I think there has been more sexism in the US. I think we see less sexism now, but I think the idea of like sexism not existing, and I do want to say this, women can obviously be sexist towards men. I think, I don't know what circles she was running in, but her views come off very much, because I looked up some other videos on her and she was all part of the leave the left movement. And I think I wonder, she seems to be part of the movement of the left is bad, the Dave Rubin, I'm going to make some profit off this. Like Candace Owens used to be kind of an SJW and then came over to, oh, the left is bad and now I'm making money. I wonder, because her turnaround, I also was trying to get some dates on it. There's some oddities of the date of the timeline she gives. Now, she might not remember everything perfectly, but not to say like, oh, she was no true liberal. Go ahead.
But I mean, that's being petty in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. That's why I went for the higher stuff first. Like, I'd rather debate like what is sexism, what is racism. I agree.
Okay. Well, anyhow, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
See ya. Whew, finally we got rid of that crazy liberal. It's good to have a rational guy in here for once.
Oh no, I'm a British conservative, so that means I'm basically a communist, right? According to that's under citizenship for America.
Yeah. So you saw Peter and Reed and who else? Rom.
Some of the other guys who had gone to like Pinecreek Poker and around the Street Epistemology International board and stuff like that. So not everyone who's here, but some of the sort of main people, I guess. And one of the people, so this is a part of the story I was gonna tell. Let me see what you thought about. Was a guy Peter had just interviewed, who is a presenter for GB News. So he's presenting a show that goes under the title of something like Free Speech Britain or something like that. So the premise being that most news channels don't want to protect free speech and talk about particular topics, and so he's doing that on GB News as the host.
Okay.
So if you want, I can go ahead with my story then of what happened.
How long is the story? You can make it like
probably
minutes.
I can probably do, yeah, I can do it condensed. So
okay,
basically I turn up, had 5 guys with Reed. That's an important part of the story. It's not really. Peter started like picking on, and I know that's kind of loaded, picking on this one guy, right? Basically because I did jiu-jitsu, and so I think he just assumed that I had all the same opinions as him or something, and I made jokes, so he liked me as well at the start. And then he told this guy that he thought he had a fundamental delusion about reality because he didn't want to train jiu-jitsu or something. It was a pretty weird conversation, where I was sort of pretty sympathetic to the other guy. I was like, look, he just doesn't want to train, right? Like, that's fair enough. And Pete was trying to use SE to get the other guy to admit that it was like a fundamental delusion about reality. Then
the fundamental delusion was not wanting to do jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, not wanting to train, not wanting to come to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu the next day to train.
Now, what was Peter's demeanor? Was it like kind of joking?
It was like, no, he was 100% serious.
Why didn't the guy just say he has a bad knee? That's good enough, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I guess Peter would still say, he would probably have still said it was a fundamental delusion about reality. But like maybe.
So Peter is in the jiu-jitsu cult.
He's in the jiu-jitsu cult, for sure. But then, so that's not the full, like, where it kind of went weird for me was, so they kind of thought I was one of them, and were very, like, I made them laugh about a bunch of my really good jokes.
You were being like Pinecreek.
I was being like Pinecreek. I used we went to different schools together and all those. And then when they were talking about woke stuff, and they said, yeah, because, you know, all these woke bastards want to destroy the West. And I said something like, yeah, I'm woke, like, or something like that. And honestly, this Andrew Dorga and Peter Boghossian, it was like a deer caught in headlights. They turned around like looking at me. And then it was almost like a moment of cognitive dissonance. So the first thing that came out was, so let me ask you one question then. Do you think J.K. Rowling should be stabbed to death and murdered? And I was like, no, of course not. And then they were like, so you're not woke then? And I was like, well, I'm not quite sure that's what I mean by woke. And then they were like, oh, so you don't understand what woke is? Like, you know, like straight into this.
Is this on camera?
And no, unfortunately, I wish I'd recorded this conversation. So then I think Peter definitely tried to be more diplomatic than the other guy. I think the other guy, being a TV show host in the format of TV show that he does host, is very kind of trained in trying to get these like gotcha soundbite type things. So that's the way he talks to people. Peter was a little bit more sort of, so let me get this clear, you know, like actually trying to understand my point of view a bit more. But neither Peter nor this other person could understand the sort of claims that, so they couldn't differentiate between being like identifying as woke and critical race theory, right? So they thought the two were the same, but they also couldn't differentiate between like the core content of critical race theory and maybe like some extra beliefs that people who are critical race theorists might have. So I was sort of trying to draw a distinction between those and say, well, look, it might be the case that critical race theory is actually compatible with like a certain type, with a lot of different types of politics, but the beliefs of some critical race theorists aren't compatible with those politics. Right?
Well, people are people, and they'll have different, slightly different definitions in their own head. But like you heard me maybe define what I thought of woke. What is your definition of woke, and what do you think the American or British definition of woke is, and do they differ?
So I actually think there's probably two uses of woke, right, that I see. One of them is as a pejorative for basically politics I don't like, right? That's kind of tends to be pretty consistent across American politics and UK politics.
So they're about the same, UK and America with that?
And well, this is how I see people on the right using the term. The way I see people with more like left-leaning sentiments using the term is to refer to politics that's basically sensitive to sort of like various social issues around like race, sex, and gender, or basically about group social issues around group identity.
That's
right? And all they mean by that is
that's almost exactly how I defined it, though. It's like I did it.
You defined it as things that disgust me.
No, I said that it's people who suffer from feel sorry forism.
A delusion.
Which
is
another
delusion of feel sorry.
Which is another way of saying what you just said, except in more of a exciting way. You said sensitive to certain issues,
I think delusion. Right? So I think that the way you're using it is in the pejorative.
I don't think I used the word delusion. Peter did.
No, you did. You said, but before, when you gave your definition earlier, you said my definition, at least the bit I listened to, you said my definition of wokeism is things that disgust me. And then you said, no, I mean a delusion about, and then you said
I was being tongue in cheek. If you listen
of course,
if you listen to the very beginning, I gave a more serious definition of woke, and it was basically what you said. It was like you framed it as people having certain sensitivities to certain minority groups, certain genders, or whatever. And I basically just said people who are who feel sorry for certain groups of people, and they'll use critical theories to justify it, or view them as victims and other people as oppressors.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much right. I do think even the feel sorry for bit, you know, I think that's doing a bit of work from your point of view to sort of make the other view seem, you know, like less appealing. Right?
It's more pejorative.
That in a demeaning, yeah, it's like a demeaning, like, oh, you feel sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but the thing is, I admit it's pejorative, but I do think I do that for a reason, because it is so, in a way, I'll use the word disgusting again, that if you're black, then you have this feel sorry forism for mostly other black people. If you're disabled, you have feel sorry forism for disabled people. If you're gay, you have more feel sorry forism for other gays, which is normal, right? It's understandable, but yet the whole goal of empathy is to be black and have empathy for white people, to be abled and have empathy for disabled. It's so tribalistic to me. That's what disgusts me.
Do you see sort of like social progress over the past 100 or so years, like particularly in places that you've lived, where that social progress would be like broadly in alignment with woke values, right?
Yeah, I think the women's right to vote. You said 100 years, right?
So like women's right to vote, maybe like, you know, black people being treated differently,
civil rights
gay
movement.
people being treated differently.
Yeah.
And I guess would you be like broadly in agreement with those like social goals?
Yeah. So I'm not saying I cannot share goals with people who I define as woke. What bothers me is that when it becomes cultish, that you're not allowed to say things or associate with certain people who you don't deem as in your tribe. Like that's what bothers me.
Yeah, I get that. And I think there's like some validity to your criticisms, right, as well. So even as someone who self-identifies as woke, and maybe, you know, you wouldn't put me in that camp, I don't know, but I think
you're a good woke person. I mean, there's good woke people and bad woke people. Like, you're a good woke person. Jay Bunny's a bad woke person.
Yeah, right. Well, that's it. Is that I think that some of the things that you do sort of demonstrate that people aren't thinking about these things clearly, or that they're too, you know, they're just being too tribal. They're too kind of like invested in their position to even find out if they were wrong about it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wonder then, what would be your markers for becoming woke? So what could you
I would say I'm already am woke.
Okay.
But I'm not the cultish woke. That's what the main,
right. So woke in the sense that you care about those social values and things.
Yeah, So woke in the sense of caring about social. So sometimes I would define woke as tough love as well. That the best thing you can maybe do for a minority is to let them fail and to blame them for their specific situation, for that specific minority individual. Whereas I think some other woke people might say, no, it's never their fault. It is the oppressors. It's white supremacy. It's the system they were raised in. Rather than, oh, no, it's their fault. That one person, you see that person sit on the couch, that's their fault. And this is where I think I'm different. But in the terms of wanting the best for minority groups or gays, lesbians, whatever, and for them not to be bodily hurt, like if that's all we mean by woke, I am a woke person.
Do you think there are any examples in the US that you could find out about that might convince you of the more kind of collectivist woke positions? So, you know, so something you could find out about the way that groups are treated, and what would that have to look like?
Yeah, I think a great metric for systemic racism, for example, is if you see a correlation, a very a good correlation between the degree of racism and the allotment in their life. So, for example, people often say household income for Black people in the United States is way below the median and way below white. And that's because of systemic racism. But yet, if there's, let's say, 50% systemic racism on Asians, you should see that the Asians are maybe not as bad as the Black people, but still 50% of white. But we don't see that correlation, which tells me I think it's cultural.
Okay. What about
that's reasonable, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's reasonable. Sorry. What about like mortgage lending rates, or like the prison example that the previous caller brought up? Do you think that what would you have to see in those cases for them to convince you that there were like kind of systems, in place that essentially oppress?
Yeah, mortgage rates is. I worked in this business. To me, it would have to be more overt. So I would have to have documentation or evidence that a person was denied a mortgage for having lots of melanin in their skin.
Do you think if the correlation between the way that the mortgage lending tables essentially discriminated and where people live?
I'm all for discrimination when it comes to mortgages.
Okay. Okay.
No, I'm just sincerely.
No, I know what you're saying.
You know exactly what I mean. There should be discrimination. It's rational to discriminate.
Money in the Federal Reserve, they can just print money and give it to the Black.
We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. No, but the thing is, like, I know what you're getting at, but like, I do think there is value in things like credit scores and having a history of being able to pay off loans that are taken freely. I do believe that not everybody deserves a home. I mean, their own home. So if let's say 90% of African Americans in the United States have a credit score under 600, I would say they don't deserve to own a home.
So what if something like affirmative action here could get more of these Black people into higher paying jobs and to be more financially responsible and make those sorts of decisions? Is that something you would be?
Yeah, I'm against that I'm against that, especially now. Maybe in the 50s, 40s, when, but now today, no. In fact, I think it has the reverse effect of unintended consequences. I think people then question, even if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's the perception, which will cause, it will cause more racism by having affirmative action.
Okay, and that questioning to you is worse than like that person having a bad credit score and not being able to like get a house or something, or get like
what's
a good mortgage. The perception that person maybe only got their job, that the perception that person might be incompetent and only got their job because of
it's not just the perception, is that it could also be the reality that like, for example, like, for example, let's say Southwest Airlines here in the United States we need 50% of pilots being women or of color, and the applicant pool is just so small of either women or people of color who want to be pilots of commercial airlines. Like, you're now putting people's lives at risk.
Do you think if there were set standards for that qualification of like being a pilot or being a surgeon, right, and those standards didn't shift, and affirmative action,
then I'd be okay.
Then you're okay, right?
Yeah, as long as, but then it would be very difficult. Like, let's say you had this diversity agenda of 50% people of color being pilots, and you still have this set standard. And what happens if you don't make it? You don't have 50%.
Yeah, right.
Which rule is going to win? The diversity rule or the standard rule? And I say the standard rule
should win.
Yeah, the standard rule should win. And if that causes people of color to cry, let them cry.
Yeah.
Oh no! Let the woke people cry. Let the woke people cry. The people of color probably won't cry. I don't want to be a pilot.
What did you think of Biden's picture of the pride flag in the center of the American flag? Do you think that is?
I just saw that this morning, actually. I think that is virtue signaling. I think I know what people mean by pride. I think I do, but
they mean the sin, right?
But if you're born gay, then what in the world are you proud of? If you're born black, what? Oh no, the black has nothing to do with that. Gay, lesbian, queer. If you're born trans, even like.
Yeah.
What pride? You should not be proud to be trans. You should not be proud to be gay. You should not be proud to be black. You should not be proud to be white. You should be proud of what you accomplish and achieve.
Do you think the idea that because people have had such sort of bad attitudes towards these people in very recent history, the idea that we should sort of actively work to help accept those people, publicly for a time is of some value? Or do you think that maybe would you say that time's passed?
It's definitely it definitely has some value, but I think this all starts in the home. Like if you're a person of color, if you're gay, whatever, and you're raised in a certain way, what society thinks of you is not going to, it will still affect you, but as long as they're not killing you, beating you up, or preventing you from getting a job, you're going to be fine. So this is the difference between me and maybe you, or maybe not, is that it starts personally, and then the collective is the secondary. So the collective can't hurt you with their mere words if you are a strong, stable person. The problem is most of society today are not strong and stable.
So if you found out that physical assaults against gay couples were far higher than physical assaults against heterosexual couples or something like that, would that be good evidence for you that we kind of need something, or
No.
something like pride is okay?
No, because you would have to show me a direct causation that putting up a flag on the White House actually lowers crime rates against gays.
Okay, yeah. So what would someone have to show you in terms of, what do you think that might look like? So would it be more pride parades, just like a correlation between more pride parades and
what's it actually?
Crime goes down or something? Hate crime.
Yeah, you would have to show me a direct causal, at least correlated link that doing X results in Y. I don't know. Would you have a control group or something like that? Yeah, you would. And if someone showed me that for every 100 pride parades, crime goes down at R squared of 0.83. I mean, okay, have a pride parade. I mean,
Iran can be the control, right?
But let me flip it. What if you'd learned that for every 100 pride parades, crime against gays goes up? Would you be for abolishing pride parades?
Yeah, and I think an even more poignant one for an advocate of pride would be a conservative talking point, right? So it would be to say, if you found out that the more pride parades there are, that incidents of pedophilia increased to something like that, would you be against pride parades? And I think that would actually be something that would move my dial.
But so often, you're asking good questions, I'm asking good questions, I think, but so often it's not about. It's not about data. It's not about, it's about, I need to feel loved. I need to feel accepted.
Do you mean in terms of what politics we support? Or
why, for example, why there's pride parades, why people hang pride flags around the house. And
I don't even know if it's that for most people. I think a lot of people just sort of do stuff, right, and don't really think about why they're doing it. They're just caught up in random.
But they get a dopamine rush, right? They feel good about themselves, that they're supporting a worthy movement that makes people feel better. But does it really accomplish anything other than making people feel better? See, this is where...
What's so bad about that?
This is where you and I are maybe a little bit different. I'm a bit of a sadomasochist in terms of happiness is overrated, that that the best fulfillment you can get in life is doing the hard things, is
well, some of the best things, but I think that they can come apart. So I think that there's a lot of very good things that there's no way of getting that good thing without doing something hard, right? But there are also some like quite nice things that aren't that hard to get, and if you could kind of like give people more of those, it wouldn't be bad just because they didn't go through suffering to kind of get that.
I don't know, I feel icky about that. I still struggle getting things for free.
So would you rather walk, like 5 miles a day to get water from a well, than get it from your taps, right? Just because the tap it's not as hard to get the water.
Yeah, well, don't be silly. Of course, you get it from the tap.
Yeah,
I'm not saying if a choice between taking your car to 10 miles to work or walking.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that when some of the greatest joy I've had in my life is through suffering. That you have a goal and you achieve it, but while trying to achieve that goal, you suffer. And that's all I'm saying. And like when I was raised on the farm, we would work hard, and then when we were done, my dad said, "Okay, now let's reward ourselves by cleaning up the backyard." I mean, you work, you achieve, and your reward is more work. This is the type of ethic I came from. And the thing is, there's always a balance, but I do think that this is the key to success.
I guess it depends what you want as to what success.
Yeah. I mean, success as the world defines it today. Like success is basically money. It's basically options. It's basically respect, privilege. Success is privilege.
Well, respect, yeah. But I think that this is part of where more left-leaning people will.
Did you see that?
Think about. I didn't see what in the chat.
No, 5 minutes left. I know I paid for this. I got to call support. Anyhow, we got 5 minutes left.
So I think that this is where more left-leaning people might, think something like, well, what you said there in terms of money, well, maybe we should change society so money doesn't perform the exact function it does, or something like that. Or so we think about that differently. And then those other things, like respect, for example, that people might get because of money, we should sort of change our social values so people are able to get respect without having lots of money. Is that,
money just represents achievement. And so,
well, not always.
Not always.
I mean, inheritance or and that's
winning the lottery.
But
in general, and this is the difference I think between a lot of people on the left and right. They think that people who have lots of money, they must have cheated or they must have done something a little shady. Like no one can amass millions or billions without actually doing something wrong. A lot of people on the left have this attitude, and it disgusts me. Again, there's that word again. What was we talking about?
Money, value. People on the left want to change up society, that's what I said. What did you mean before that?
I think in general, what we're talking about here is the difference between socialism and capitalism. And I think that the human condition is more attuned to a balance of the two, but more weighted to capitalism. So in other words, greed is not necessarily bad, that it can lead to impetus, a motivation to overcome, to succeed. And I think using greed is better than using stability. Or like if you look at all the great things that's happened in the United States or in the world even, most of them have been the result of fear or greed. Like putting a person on the moon. Most of our technology has come out of war. It's fear, it's greed, to take over other countries is what drives innovation. I'm not advocating that we start wars just to get innovation, but it's a pleasant result of it. And I think that if you make people too comfortable through socialism, that the innovation, productivity will start to fall off.
Would you agree that America is like one of the most capitalist societies on Earth, like free market capitalist. I mean, there's probably some you could point to that might be more.
Yeah, definitely the top 10.
In the top. So is America like a good example to use for you for sort of like seeing what that kind of system produces and comparing it to other societies that are more like driven by different economic policies? Or do you think that America is a sort of like bad example because it's not like free market enough?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but it's probably in the top 10 percentile in terms of most capitalist type countries. But we only got 2 minutes left. I was going to ask you.
Sure. Okay, you got. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, what countries in the world are better that you personally would want to live in other than the United States?
I think Norway and Sweden are two. Possibly Germany, though I'm not 100% sold on that.
Okay,
I definitely really like. Okay,
why is what are some things bad about the United States that would make you want to live in Norway or Sweden?
Healthcare system is a big one, and that being subsidized by the state, basically. The tuition fees and things around university. So in the US, you're not a salaried employee, basically, if you're doing a PhD. Number of holidays per year, like as standard or what's legally enforced, would be one of them as well.
So more holidays and more free stuff.
Mostly, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I had. I'll let you go because you're gonna cut off in 10 seconds. Take care.
No problem.
Thanks
Cheers,
for coming on. Actually, I'm gonna do I can't do a poll, but for the people who lean left, I'm gonna ask you guys the same question I asked Nathan. Which countries, these are for the people who would rather live in a country other than the United States. So which country would you rather live in other than the US? If you lean left, answer now, please. No, the show's not over. Just the interview portion of the show's over. I'm not sure how much longer I'll go. Yes, you're right, Glenn Royer. There's nothing free. So basically, when you want universal health care, you were basically saying you want wealthier people to pay for poor people's health care. When you say you want free tuition fees, you're saying you want wealthier people to pay for your children's education. When you say you want more holidays, you're basically saying you want businesses to pay for you staying home and not working. Okay, we got Canada, most of Europe. Gotta be more specific, Jerome. Norway, Iceland, China. Seriously, China? Come on. Where would you rather live other than the United States? For people who lean left. People who lean right already say the United States is the best country in the world, so they're not going to answer that. Denmark. Okay, that's a new one. Denmark, Canada. No, Sweden, Holland. By the way, this is a trap question. I'm going to trap all you leftists out there. Nathan, I hope you're still here. Netherlands, that's same as Holland. Canada. Mexico. But I've been asking this for a while. I've seen other people ask this. I've seen people's responses, and they all basically end up being, like, the majority of the time, the answers are Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, maybe Australia? Steinbach, Manitoba. Yeah, that's where I went to high school. But get this. This is for the people who lean right. This is what you do. This is how you trap them. You have a discussion about systemic racism in the United States, and then you ask them which countries would you rather live in, and they will typically say Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, and then you say something like this. Did you know that every country you listed has a higher percentage of white people? Boom. So you want to live where there's more white people, is what you're saying, Mr. and Mrs. Left-leaner. You want to live where there's more white people. That's the trap. I know it's dirty, but Germania, you seriously? You got to ask yourself, is it possible that Pinecreek has already talked about this for the last hour? And all I need to do is hit the rewind button. I would move to Arizona if Doug sponsored me. See, Nathan, don't go anywhere, but your answers about why, about healthcare, tuition fees. People who lean right would, I think, answer this way when it comes to healthcare. Imagine someone who chooses to smoke and chooses to drink alcohol, chooses to, I don't know, take drugs that cause problems in their health. And then imagine someone who eats their vegetables, has a well-balanced diet, and exercises. When you have universal type healthcare, you're paying for the people who make bad decisions with their personal health and people who make good decisions. In other words, that whole type of personal accountability, rewards and punishments, that the smoker maybe should have worse health care because they made those personal choices. In other words, would you give, imagine this will make it perfectly clear. I know what I just said sounds very harsh, but this will make it more clear. Imagine, Nathan, someone says, I'm hungry, give me an apple. Because I'm eating an apple. Please, give me an apple, I'm hungry. So I give the person an apple. And instead of eating it, they take the apple and they throw it in the creek. And you go, what'd you do that for? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I thought it was a baseball. Please, give me another apple. And you give them another apple. And they take that apple and they throw it in the creek. This is similar, in a way, to people who abuse social programs. You give them stuff, and then they still make bad choices. If you don't give them stuff, they will reap the consequences of their bad choices. And we humans are basically like mice. We're like rats, actually. We humans are rats. When we tap the bar, and we get a little piece of food. Good food. If we don't tap the bar, we don't get food. People eventually learn that, oh, if I smoke and drink, I'll probably die at age 50 or 60 or 70, whatever. And, that's their choice. But don't ask other people to pay for their medications, their drugs, surgeries to keep them alive. Harsh, right? But it works because we're rats. Humans eventually learn. Some people learn faster than others. Doug, did we go to the same high school or did you go to Midnight? I went to both. Wait a minute, Sasha. How old are you? I went to SRSS and I also went to SBC. And you know what SBC stands for. I didn't know you were from Manitoba, or did I? But you're way younger than me. I was there when high school was cool. Yeah. You were not even in kindergarten when I graduated from high school. Yeah, I lived in Steinbach for 3 years. I went to the Bible college there for grade 10 and 11. Stayed in the dormitory for 1 year. I played a terrible practical joke on the dean of students at Steinbach Bible College. You know those plaque, those pills you chew, the red pills to see where your plaque is on your teeth? I had a bunch of those red pills. And I had my roommate go to the dean of students and say, "Come quick, Doug is coughing up blood." And I had it worked out that when he came out of his room, he saw me run into the bathroom in the dorm. And then I waited, and sure enough, he came running into the bathroom. And I had it planned that as he opened the door, I would go, "Bleh," and just all this red stuff comes out. And then I looked sideways at him with this red blood stuff coming, dripping down, and gave him a big smile. He didn't like me after that. But I got kicked out of the dorm at SBC because I would go for runs in the evening, and they had a curfew of 8:30, 9, and I would run for like 10 miles. I was a good runner in high school. And they said, "No, you can't do that. It's past curfew." I'm just running. I'm keeping my body healthy for the Lord. This is my temple. I'm keeping my temple in good shape. I would joke like that with them. He said, no, rules are rules. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to enforce this rule with me, I'm going to leave this school. This gives you some insight on the type of guy I am. I gave my principal an ultimatum. Because this is a private school that you have to pay money, right? My dad paid good money for that school. So here's the ultimatum. You either let me run. I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just running. It's not like I stole a person and then running and having the woman chase me. You either let me run past curfew to, let's say, 10, or I leave the school and I'll go to the public school. And this is their mistake. They caved to me. Oh, that's the worst thing they could have done. They said, okay, we'll make an exception. Because I was also like the academic of the year and the athlete of the year. And that's the worst thing you can do to a high school kid, is give them that type of power. And it was the worst grade 11 year because I was just like, yeah. But in grade 12, I was a good boy. In Canada, we don't say senior, junior, sophomore, freshman. We say grade 10, or 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't know why you Americans, actually I'm an American now, I don't know why we Americans say sophomore, freshman, when you can just say numbers. Numbers are better. My daughter's birth would have cost $50,000 if I lived 200 kilometers west into Michigan. Instead, it cost me $20 in parking. Yeah, isn't it nice that rich people paid for your daughters? Yeah, I was definitely a troublemaker. We are better than Canadians. Oh, Canada's really going nuts nowadays. Can no longer buy a handgun in Canada, according to Trudeau. I don't know if that's passed or not. And you can't say bad things without risking going to jail about people you don't like. I mean, words are violence, you know. This is why I love America. Home of the land and free, where you can insult people. I would not want to live in a country where you're not allowed to say things that make people cry. because this is how we find out what's true or not. There's always going to be something that makes people cry because they're believing a lie. And if you can't point that out, that they're believing a lie because it will make them cry, I'd rather die. I'm a poet, and I wasn't even aware of the fact. Time to invade Canada. Yeah, we need to invade Canada as Americans. Get rid of all the wokeness, the bad wokeness. And then flip it. Flip it and sell it to California. Yeah, Canada's good at hockey. Oh, now you're paying for other people's health care. Well, there you go. Giving back. In taxes, I hope. Someone tried to trap me. Ask me a question to trap me. I always ask the trap questions. Someone trap me. Actually, can I? Did you read about the guy at a girls' track meet that loudly accused girls with short hair of being trans? No, didn't hear about that. See, but this is the unintended consequences of allowing biological males in women's sports. Like, this is same with affirmative action. Now you got people yelling at biological girls that they're trans because they have short hair. Now everybody is now looking more closely at females on the track. Is there a bulge or isn't there? Right? Admit it. My list of how to deconvert the woke. On the issue of trans stuff, focus on men in sports, men in women's sports, biological males in women's sports. Focus on that. Focus on penises being removed in surgery. Focusing on like that type of transitioning for minors. There was one other thing. But this is you, and then utter these words to your woke cult friends. Utter these words. You do not want to be on the wrong side of history on this. Use the same words that they might use to people on the right. Use it right back at them. And you see that they're starting to crack. Like, reasonable woke people, they're not going to say, oh yes, you got to accept every teenager who says they're trans, and if they want surgery they should have surgery. No, reasonable people on the left are not going to go there. They're not going to even go there with the sports stuff. Yeah, 50,000 is about right for C-section nowadays. Well, maybe 30, 40. About 17 years ago, I think I paid, well, the bill was 22,000. If you want to save money on healthcare, you save cash and you pay as much cash as you can, and you just have catastrophic type insurance. If you want to lower healthcare costs in the United States, encourage cash paying. Unfortunately, people don't have cash. They live paycheck to paycheck. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have no business becoming a mother or father, in my opinion. I think it's immoral to do so. You're basically saying, please bring on divorce because financial stress is the #1 cause of divorce. Please bring on dependence on the government and dependence on others because you don't have money, so you're dependent on others, which now gives them influence in how to raise your children and all that stuff. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. I'm all for co-signing. Like, if grandparents want grandchildren, you say, okay, grandpa, grandma, you want me to have kids with my wife? Then sign on the dotted line. You help pay for them. And if you don't, we're going to wait until We can pay for them ourselves. Yes, you would get a population collapse in the US, DigitalGnosis. And that's a good thing because I'm an environmentalist. You know the carbon footprint of the average baby? Oh, speaking of which, we got to check the sea levels every day. No, once a week is good. Sea level has not changed. No new data. Global temperature. No new data in 2023, but we are still lower than 6 years ago. I still haven't got a response from NASA on why they moved their whole chart, sea level chart, down by 2 standard deviations of error. Check sea level, sea temperature? They don't have sea temperature on this website. I never saw that movie, Sasha. Well, it depends on how you define rich, but what is wrong with people only having kids that they can afford? Like, are there actually people in the live stream chat who say people in poverty should have more kids? Seriously, are you in the live stream chat, anyone? Like, is there anybody who would advocate poor people to have kids? I'm not saying legally, I'm just saying, would you encourage poor people to have kids? I don't think I dare anybody in the live stream chat to say, hi, I'm one of those people who would say poor people should have kids. You are aware that is not how climate change is measured, right? Scientists don't check Google for that graph. No, scientists actually make what I Googled. What is wrong with you, Deus Ex Machina? What is wrong with you? Scientists do their work and then they publish the results on charts like this. Global climate change, NASA. This is their website. I'm just reading it. My goodness. I'm not sure what you're saying, DigitalGnosis. I'm not saying about seeing it. I'm looking at the data. You guys saw this video. There's some of you here who watched me. It used to be, let me bring it up. And I still have not got explanation. But this number used to be 104. I can prove that. I can prove it. I have the video. This number a few months ago used to be 104. Now it's 98.5. And the chart line still went up. In other words, I'm saying they shifted the whole curve down. They shifted the whole curve down, or at least part of the curve down. It's not like it went 104 and down to 98.5. No, the 104, the 98.5 is the new 104. And I have not got an explanation of what they did. Maybe Potholer can explain to me why NASA did that. Maybe he knows. I wouldn't recommend people in poverty having kids, but expecting that to happen is like expecting abstinence only. Well, Glenn Royer, you got to look at the data. The data is that more and more, or the rate of teen pregnancies which is a good approximation for poor people not having kids, is going down. So change your expectations. We can expect people to make good decisions because it's working. Just by telling people, hey, if you're poor, don't have kids. Just say that out loud. Say it out loud. And it will feel icky, but it works. Educate people. I watched that video a long time ago, I think when you first recommended it, or at least I skimmed it. There's nothing there. It's like, there's nothing there that I disagreed with. I mean, but the purpose of me doing this is there's people with real anxieties and fears thinking that it's like doomsday. And then when they see, this is my way to help their feelings. But some people on the left, they hate bringing up the data. No, don't show the data. When they see, what? Oh, they always screw this up. In other words, it's hard to see this here, but this is 2018, 2016. There's like 6 years here where the global temperature has not risen. That's all I'm saying. That's just what the data says. 6 years, global temperature has not made new highs. 6 years. And then people are going to assume I'm saying something I'm not. I'm saying exactly what the data says. 6 years. The Earth has not made new highs. Now, sea level, it's a different story. It's, I think, 6 months it has made new highs. What's a good age to start having kids? Depends. Some kids are mature, or some people mature. Some are not. But I would say if you're looking in terms of biology, a good age to have kids, strictly based on biology, is 16, 17 years old. Right? Like if you're 16 or 17, all you have to do is think about sex and you get pregnant. Hey, James Page, look at your keyboard, find the letter A, and then to the left of it, it's a caps lock. Press that now. Ah, Wadabaka. Well, Doug, don't focus on that data. Focus on the data that will cause capitalism to end the soonest. I don't worry about anything DigitalGnosis. Well, I don't worry much about much of anything. If you assume you're already dead, I mean, every day above ground's a good day. You're going to die. We're all going to die. Even you, Uber. Well, yeah, some people on the left are not even hesitant to say it. They'll just come out and say it. Climate change is a way to get wealth transfer and get social equity or equity. Some people are not even shy about admitting that. But humans can do stuff. We actually can build things. We can prepare. We can move. We have air conditioning. Six years. We can do a lot of things in 6 years. If humans put their mind to it, we can accomplish a lot in 6 years. Boeing made a whole fleet of aircraft bombers in under 6 years to help defeat Hitler. Ford. Ford, I don't know. Jack of Trades. Cap lock button. I honestly think that some people just look for things to worry about. Maybe I'm the opposite extreme. Maybe you got to take me and then take people who worry about everything and go in the middle somewhere. Please, go in the middle somewhere. Don't be like me if you don't want to and just not worry or care much about anything. But don't be like these people who think that we're all going to die. If we don't put Trump in jail, we're going to have our next dictator. And if we don't get rid of all fossil fuels, the Earth's going to explode in a ball of fire in 50 years. Don't be that person. Be somewhere in the middle. I know you're seeing old SNL. What? Got to speak English, Jack of Trades. That's an old Chris Farley bit, El Nino. Yeah, like this whole worry thing. My wife's a bit of a worry wart, which is weird because she's a Christian and she's commanded not to worry because today has enough troubles on its own. As a Christian, you shouldn't worry. Your Lord and Savior has commanded it. You should worry if you're an atheist and there's no God, because I tell you, if no one's going to feed you, you can't wait, pray for a miracle. This is why secular humanism can be viewed as religion, because this is what atheists have left. So if you want to be an atheist, you should be wealthy, I think. That way you avoid the temptation of going back to religion when things get desperate. Do you not even worry about how climate will be when your kids are old? Not one bit. Not one bit. Yellowstone National Park could blow up before then. A big rock could hit the earth before then. Another real devastating virus could happen before then. I mean, if we're going to talk about all the bad things that can happen, not worried a bit. I encourage you not to worry either. Life's too short. I'm not saying you do nothing. I'm saying like, yeah, maybe eat a little less meat. Maybe buy a car that does better on gas mileage. Maybe, yeah, sure, put on solar panels if you live in a very sunny place. Speaking of which, who here has solar? Solar panels on their house. What has been your experience? I'm asking because I'm considering getting solar on my roof. On my roof. Anybody here can give me advice on solar panels? What to avoid, things to ask, things to do, things to consider. Because I think the returns on it are becoming attractive and the efficiencies on them are getting very good. Better than they were. No one here has solar? I have an off-grid solar house with batteries in it. Ooh, Northwest backcountry. You should email me If Armageddon happens, you know, I need a place to stay. No, I got Hutterite friends. I'm okay. I've got solar. It's awesome, but it's way cheaper here in India. Don't know about US. Oh, and you're in India. Oh. I should have known. Mitesh Patel. Or is it Mitesh Patel? I like that East Indian guy who called in the other day, and I called him an Indian, and he didn't say he was an Indian. He goes, "How did you know my ethnicity?" "You got a slight accent." There are more trees in Canada than stars in the galaxy. I have solar. There's no Americans in here that have solar. We got to rely on the East Indians and the Australians. I'm thinking of getting 6 or 7 watts worth, which I think will cost 20 grand. But if you do the math, if you can save at least $100 a month in electricity off of a $20,000 investment, that's $1,200 a year. That's 6%, right? Yeah, that's a 6% return. But I have a feeling I can, on a 6-watt system, I can get more than $100 savings. And the thing is, the beauty about living in Arizona is it's sunny so often, but I would just, and I work from home, I would just do my laundry and run my pool pump and run the air conditioner when it's sunny. When it's not sunny, don't do the laundry, don't run the pool pump. Well, you still need the air conditioner a little bit. Yeah, not watts, kilowatts, that's what I mean. 7 kilowatts? Yeah. I think a 7 kilowatt system would be too much. So I would never lease. I got the cash. I'll just buy it. But I get the feeling that some of these solar panel guys are shysters, or con artists. I mean, I just don't, if someone knocks on my door and wants me to buy their solar panels, no. Never stop running your pool pump. Yeah, that's good advice. But that pool pump can get expensive. Yeah, it's always good to have a backup generator as well. And then if you do have a backup generator, you should plug it right into your electrical box. So you just start the generator and it's instantaneously everything in your house is going. Hey, good job, what? There's people in here who you're paying for. In fact, as what question mark goes to work to pay for the taxes who don't want to work, I think it's a good idea for some of you leftists to send thank you notes to what? Thank you for working and paying taxes. I mean, if I was president of the United States, or I think I would make a good manners law that poor people write letters to random 1%ers thanking them for their contribution to their life. Like, if someone gives you something for free, I mean, just gives you something, you say thank you, right? So if a billionaire or a multimillionaire pays lots of tax, if they paid lots of tax, you should write a thank you note. Dear Mr. Millionaire, thank you so much for paying for my roads. Thank you so much for paying for the military. that protects me. Without you, I wouldn't have all these things. I do not take those who pay lots in tax for granted. Love, poor person. Rochelle, careful now. Careful. But I think you're right. But you can't say that out loud. I mean, people get offended. The thing is, any other situation, any type of membership, if you are in a bowling league, if you're in a YMCA, anything with a membership, and memberships have dues. And if you don't pay your dues, then you're not allowed to vote. Except for if you're a member of a country called the United States. Do rich people pay lots of tax in the US? Yes. I mean, if you have to ask that question, you don't know the data. It's something like 60%, 60 to 80%. Oh, I used to know this off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find it. Why use your head when you can just use Google, right? I have literally written checks, because I'm an old guy, back in the day, let's say 10 years ago, checkbooks were still a thing. I've written checks for $75,000 in federal taxes. Like, literally have to write $75,000, sign it. I didn't get a thank you letter. Where's my thank you letter? Hey, Flamio, thanks. Dear Mr. Pinecreek, thank you for spending time away from your money pool to talk to little people who extract minerals for you. Thank you, Flamio, my good slave friend. Flamio, you're a good, I don't want to call you a slave. What do you call it in the fiefdom days? Peasant. You're a good peasant. Thank you. Okay, here we go. This is for Glenn. Is it Glenn? Wasn't a serious question, but you ask a good question. Let's look at the data. Follow the science. What is this? Tax Foundation? Oh, this must be a right-wing conservative site. January 26, 2023. In 2020, taxpayers filed on blah, 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 blah. 1.7 trillion in individual tax income taxes. Oh, by the way, you know what the budget is? I think it's closer to 4 trillion. 1.7 trillion in individual taxes. We have a budget of 4 trillion. I'm just saying that if you doubled the taxes, just doubled them, you would not get rid of the deficit. Average income tax rate is 13.6%. Top 1% paid 26%. More than 8 times higher than the 3.1% paid by the bottom half. Oh, get this. The top 1% income share from 20% to, in 2019 to 22%. So 1% of the population pays 22% of the taxes. Oh, that's in 2020. 38.8 to 42.3? Oh, yeah. Its share of federal income taxes paid rose from 38.8 to 42.3. The top 1% pay 42% of the federal income tax. So this is why all the poor people should write letters to the top 1% saying thank you for your contribution to my livelihood. Because they say it back to you when you go frequent their businesses. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your business. The top 50% of all taxpayers paid 97.7% of all federal income tax. while the bottom 50% paid 2.3%. Half the country basically pay no tax. Half federal income tax. Don't give me the sales tax thing. Yes, 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 they pay sales tax. Yes, 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 they sometimes pay property tax. Yes, 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 other taxes. We're talking about federal income tax. The average tax rate for the top 1%, 26. Yeah, so when you hear about so-and-so paid no income tax and they're a billionaire, well, you're going to find exceptions like that, especially if they take losses through their businesses or whatever the years prior, or if it's capital gains or they don't sell anything, well, whatever. But on average, the top 1% pays 26%. Top 5, 22. According to this, I'm a top 10 percentile. I'm in here somewhere. Yeah, well, there you go. Federal income tax, you mean individual? Yeah. No, it's more. What are you talking about of all the different types of taxes paid, like sales tax? Yes. Well, the thing is, they call it Social Security and Medicare tax, but it all goes in the same fund. You remember the days of Al Gore, the black box? That's a bunch of baloney. Just goes in the general fund. But you're right, like I pay as a self-employed person my federal income tax, and then 7.5% on top of that. Serf, yes, there's a good word. Flamio is a good serf, good peasant. I mean, I pay for his food and shelter and clothing, and he gives back $5. I mean, he would have no roads to drive on if it wasn't for me, but he gives back. I mean, brings a tear to your eye. How about those big evil corporations? Oh, he didn't say evil. And the millionaires who find the loopholes to avoid paying most of the taxes. Yeah. Hey, Doug Dean, we should get rid of the federal income tax and make it a consumption tax. No loopholes. Let's make it fair. Are you on board? Do you support me for Senate, Doug Dean? Let's do a, what do you say, 14% general consumption tax. Get rid of federal income tax. What do you say, Doug Dean? You going to vote for me? You won't vote for me because you realize that's going to impact everybody the same, even the poor people. Land value tax. Hey, if you're against loopholes, then let's vote these people out who support their loopholes. Remember what Trump said? He said, yeah, I use loopholes because they're legal. And all Hillary's donors, big donors, they use the loopholes too. That's what Dave Chappelle called Trump the honest liar. The system's rigged. And I know it's rigged because I use it. Just have everyone pay their fair share. What does fair share mean? When I think of fair, I mean like if you go to a restaurant and there's 10 people and they all order the same thing, or it's a buffet, whatever. You take the bill and you divide it by 10. Is that fair? Yeah. If people paid their fair share, then poor people should pay more taxes than rich people. Why do I say that? Because poor people in the United States tend to be obese, have more health problems, have mental problems. If people paid their fair share, the poor would have to pay more than the rich. If that's what you mean by fair. But you don't mean that by fair. To you, fair means the rich pay way more than the poor. That's fair. Right? Right. Flat tax at 8%. Well, if you did a flat tax of 8%, government revenues would plummet because the average right now is 13.6. You're talking on income tax, right? Flat income tax, or are you talking consumption tax? And another thing that gets my gitch in a waddle is people think, oh, if you just tax the rich, our problems are solved. People who say that, or what I mean, our deficit problems are solved. People who say that have no clue what they're talking about. They don't have a clue. And I can prove it. Let me bring something up. Flat income, that's what you meant? Yeah, you would see revenues to the Treasury plummet. Well, depends if you get some type of, what do you call it? Increase in GDP because of the decrease in taxes, which could happen. No, Matesh, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. You know why? People who said earlier about when I asked the question, what country would you rather live in other than the United States? People said things like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, Holland. Compare those countries in demographics to the United States, both in size and ethnicity. Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Denmark, Canada, they are more, even Canada is more monolithic in ethnicities than the United States. You can't just say one size fits all. This is, what month is this? I got May. Fiscal year ends September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. This is 8 months. What works in one country, Matesh, may not work in another. Okay, this is 8 months. No, this is not 8 months. Oh, yes, it is. 8 months. The deficit's 1.2 trillion. See that? Over 8 months. So we're on pace for what? 1.7 trillion deficit? Individual income taxes. This is total receipts. 1.5 trillion. And about, what did I say? 35% of that's from the top 1%. So let's tax the, let's do a little experiment here. Let's tax the top 1% over, let's say, I don't know, 500,000. Let's tax them 99%. So I think it was 38. The top 1% pay 38% of the individual income taxes. 38% times 1.5 trillion. It's roughly 500 billion. And let's just say we tax them. Let's say we take all of it. Let's just take it all. That's 570 billion. Oh. And we're on pace for 1.5 trillion. It would reduce the deficit by 1/3, but we would still have a deficit. You hear that, folks? You understand what I'm saying to you? What I just said shows you how bad the situation is. You take the top 1 percentile and take everything they earn. Everything. You think 39% or 20% is too low? 70% you say? No. 80? No. Let's go 100. Let's just take it all. It wouldn't barely make a dent in our deficit. Glenn Roy, your comment shows you the ridiculousness, because the tax cuts were mostly for the 1%. I'm saying not only get rid of those tax cuts, I'm saying let's take everything they earn and assume they'll keep earning it. I don't know why they would, because you're taking everything they earn. Glenn Royer, listen to what I'm saying. You can take everything a top 1 percentile makes in the United States and wouldn't make a dent in our deficit. At best, maybe it will drop a third. But our debt will still keep going up and up. This shows you how out of control our spending is. Because spending, social programs, Social Security, health, they're all going through the roof. Doug Dean, what you're saying is irrelevant to what I'm saying. I'm not casting blame one way or the other. What I'm saying is, anybody who says we can solve the problems of debt deficits by taxing the rich more, listen to what I'm saying. You can take it all and it will barely make a dent. The problem is on this expenditure side. Now, you can have other solutions, like raise taxes for the 1%, the very rich, or raise the taxes for everyone. That's another option. You get more bang for your buck. Or you can have a general consumption tax, make everybody pay more for everything. Like, let me bring this back up. You're welcome, by the way, in getting this education. Corporate income taxes, $234 billion. And the corporate tax rate is what? It's still at 22%? Or did it go back up to 27, 28? Let's try this for all you left leaners out there. Let's take everything a 1 percentile makes. Let's take those filthy rich people. Let's just take everything that they earn. And let's also take everything that corporations earn. Guess what? Still not going to make a dent. Because right now they're being taxed, the corporations at 28. So this number might go to $1 trillion. Actually, if that's true, if you took everything corporations earned and just confiscated it, you would still have a deficit, but it would be closer to zero. Because remember, this number is for 8 months. Like, people do not appreciate, the average Joe on the street does not appreciate just how bad things are on the expenditure side. They think, oh, just have the rich pay their fair share. Oh, just raise the taxes on corporations. You can take it all and you're still going to have a problem. The only way to get out of this is to cut every program across the board. Well, either that or start defaulting on loans, which will cause interest rates to go sky high, which will cause the dollar to go sky low, dirt low, which will cause more inflation. But yeah, I see what you're saying. My solution is to have, let's see, what would be my solution? My solution is I'm willing to compromise with people on the left and say, let's go to 70% income taxes, like it was in the 60s, but then let's scale back social programs to way back in the 60s, and let people cry. Let people feel anxiety, depression, guilt, and cry, because it's like we're in a rowboat, it's sinking. But really, for those people, that comes out of income security, right? Yeah, it's maybe Medicare, which are still pretty big two items. So yeah, and then you have to issue a general sales tax, probably of 7%, 8%. You're going to have to raise the retirement age to probably from 65, 62, 65. You're going to have to raise it to 70. And if you make over a certain amount, sure, you paid in, but sorry, tough luck. You're not going to get anything out. That's the only way to save, I think, these two: Social Security, Medicare. And then you're going to have to probably default on some of the debt because the interest payments are getting too high. Like, look at this. Last month was even worse. I check this every month, just like I could do with the climate change. National defense, $66 billion a month. This is per month. Net interest, 61. I've been watching these things for a decade. Because interest rates have been so low for so long, the interest on debt has been 30, 27, 35 billion a month. We're now into the 60s. Some months, this is May, but April, I believe, this number was bigger than national defense. We spend more money on net interest, payments on the debt, than on national defense. Interest on money. And we're printing money to pay the interest on the money. This is called a Ponzi scheme. This is literally a Ponzi scheme. You can't get a better definition than that when you actually start printing money to pay interest on the money you printed. Is this on? Hello? For a long time. Since World War II, right? What math is not adding up? You could cut everything across the board like someone mentioned, but then you're going to have definitely riots in the streets. We could just kill all the poor people and feed them to the retired people in some type of soy milk. I laugh at these things because it's either laugh or cry, and I prefer to laugh. Good point, Sasha. But there are countries that that don't have debt. In fact, isn't Norway one of them? Or if they do have debt, it's just like an operating, like it's not a serious thing. Like they have the sovereign wealth fund, right? So what tends to happen is you got to look at the differentials between countries, and that will affect the exchange rates, the value of each currency. You just can't say, well, everybody has debt, let's just wipe everything out. Because some countries don't have debt, and some countries owe more debt to certain countries than other countries. But I get the gist of what you're saying. Would you agree that Bush and Trump tax cuts did more harm than good? No, I wouldn't. I would say they're a push. And here's why. Because we're printing, we would have had a deficit either way. We're printing money to pay for those deficits either way. like the tax rates under Bush and Trump are very much same as the prior 4 presidents. It really didn't change that much. People think that the tax cut under Trump was huge. It was actually huge as a percentage for poorer people, actually, but it just went from 39, the top marginal tax rate just went from 39 to 35, 36. Which I think is the same tax rate under Obama. No, not Obama. Obama was 39. Trump was 39 until he got it switched to 35. But Reagan, for the first half of his first term, his tax rate was 70, and then he went down to 50. Historical marginal tax rates. Yeah, here it is. We can look at it together. Yeah, well, not every country, but most countries issue debt. I'm saying it's neither good or bad. That's what I meant by push. Okay, so the current tax rate over 628,000 years, 37. So Bush, Trump just lowered it. He lowered it by 2%, 2.6%, 39.6 to 37. Did you know that? The third bracket was at 22 under Trump, or it's still under Trump. He lowered it more as a percentage for the middle class, 3%, from 25 to 22, 2.6%, as just a percent. But it's been like 35, 36, 37, 39 for decades. 2012 was 35, 35, 35, 35. Okay, you mentioned Bush Jr. Bush Jr. was elected in 2000, right? Yeah, when he first took office, 39, but then he implemented tax cuts at 38.6 and then 35. He dropped it from 38 to 39 to 35, same as Trump. But my point is the deficits, like, I don't know how people can hear what I said earlier and think that this has much of an impact when I say that we can take all the money of the 1%. We can take all the money from the income money from corporations, and it still wouldn't make a dent to our current expenditures. Like, what is there anything coming out of my mouth you don't understand? That tells you the problem is on the expenditure side. There's not enough revenue to pay for the current level of expenditures, even if you just took it all from the 1%, took it all from the income of the corporations. And of course you can't take it all, because then what incentive would there be to be a 1%er, to be a corporation if you just took it all? I mean, at that point you might as well just become a communist country. Which some of you want. Wait till countries drop the dollar. Yeah, that will cause inflation to go up. Good news though, inflation is dropping. It is dropping. It's still at over 4% year to year. How should plebs make more money? Well, Flamio, I've seen your hats. I think you should be a dancer. Entertainment industry is where it's at. Learn a few moves, on the dance floor. Buy yourself a pole. But seriously, there is a high demand for stable people. Most people are on drugs. Not most. So many people are on drugs, mentally ill, cannot be relied on. I've been actually thinking of starting a business where all employees have been vetted to be normal. No mental illness, no history of mental illness, no history of drug use. Basically, businesses will come to my business and say, I want a reliable employee that I have to worry about. I don't want a burden. Maybe even the woke cult has been screened out. You're not going to get a woke employee. You're not going to get a screwed up employee. You're going to get like an employee that you can rely on. Actually, the more I think about it, the more this is a good idea. Yeah, Doug Dean, you're close to death's door. You don't have to worry about this, right? Hang on, I'm perfectly normal, reliable, and I smoke some weed. Come on. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm talking about more of the harder drugs. I'm not saying that if you have the odd cigar and you drink the odd drink that you can't be part of my organization. You guys are triggering me, and I like it. Drop the defense budget by 50%. $1.1 trillion. %, you said? National defense. This is through 8 months. But we're comparing apples to apples here. So you said 50%? What amazes me, cyanextion, is you think your solution actually makes a dent. It makes me chuckle. National defense. What's 531 divided by 2? 265? 265. Subtract from 1165? Whew. That's a nice little reduction, isn't it? Doesn't make a dent. You could take all the national defense out. We would still have a deficit. Can you do math? This number is bigger than this number. Let's take all this out. This number now goes down by 531, and you're still left with 600 billion deficit. I don't think you guys can appreciate what I'm saying here. Do you understand what I'm saying? And by the way, this will be fun. Where do you think the United States rates as a percentage of GDP on defense spending? Like, do you think they're the top? If you say they're number one, you're just, I'm setting you up here. They're not. I think the United States is 13th out of 198 countries in defense spending as a percentage of GDP. Sean Kelly, the chart I'm showing you here is for the first 8 months of fiscal 2023. This is the first 8 months of 2023, Brian Stevens. So we're on pace for 900 billion or something. Yeah, Jack of Trades, if we cut every program by 10%, that'd be 140 billion a year. No. Well, depends what you mean by program. You see this number up here? This is total outlays for the first 8 months. If we dropped everything by 10%, it would drop it by 416 billion. Look at our deficit. 1.1 trillion. Wouldn't make a dent. Dropping everything 10% would not make a dent. You'd have to drop every Social Security by 30%, health by 30%, income security by 30%, national defense by 30%, Medicare by 30%. You can't touch interest unless you want to cause mayhem. I mean, you're talking 30% over the board cuts if you want to get even Steven. Now that's just to get even Steven. If you want to start paying down the debt, which, you know, people on the left think that's heresy. I mean, that's a sin. You never pay down debt. Everybody knows that. That's just science. But if you want to start paying down the debt, you would have to like start cutting everything 30% and then increase taxes. This is fun. No, 35% is a dent. Dropping everything 35% on the expenditure side would make a dent. It would get you down to even. So there's no deficit. What's the absolute number though? What do you mean? What do you mean? The absolute number of deficit is, we're on pace for 1.5 trillion deficit this year. Which, by the way, we're on pace for a 1.5 trillion deficit, and things are not that bad in the economy. I mean, they're not great, but not compared to COVID, way better. Compared to 2008 recession, way better. Compared to the dot-com bubble recession, way better. In 2001, I mean, if the deficit is this big, especially as a percentage of GDP, it's still going up, and things are fairly okay, this is bad. Jack of Trades, I got it right here, what you typed. I've been showing this for the last half hour. Maybe you can't see the screen. I don't know. Yeah, the party's over. This is what happens when you get people sucking on the teat of the government. Budgets never go down. In my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen a budget go down. I mean, overall. I mean, this number here, total outlays, I've never seen that number go down. There might be certain things embedded in these big categories that might go down. They'll say the rate of growth goes down. The rate of growth goes down. But no, to get human beings who are dependent on the government to vote for someone who will make this number shrink, oh, that's like asking for a lesbian with a sense of humor. That's like asking for a unicorn to appear. I mean, it's not going to happen. I forgive you, Jack of Trades. May God be with you. So your goal in life is to pretend the government doesn't exist. Can you survive? Pretend the government is gone. Will you be able to survive? That, of course, is not going to happen. But think of it in terms of worst case scenarios. Do you have enough cash saved? Do you have a way of driving income that's not government dependent? If not, make small, tiny steps today to get there. I mean, it scares me too because I've put a ton of money into these two categories. I've put a ton of money in these two categories, and I have a feeling I'll never get it back. Like, it's supposed to be for me. Like, it's literally supposed to be for me. I put in money for Social Security to get back for me. Not for you, for me. My money for me, but it has to go through this middleman for some strange reason. And I have a feeling it's gone. Yeah, Canada's doing better than United States as far as debt per GDP. Although I'm not sure what they're on pace for this year. But Canada is smarter in the sense that they tax middle class more. Like, if you actually want to make a dent on the taxation side, don't focus on the rich. Well, you can focus on the rich, but you have to include the middle class. And even the poor. Like, you got to say, okay, you made $10,000 last year. Give me $100, says the IRS. Give me something at least. Right now, they get like money back. I don't know how that works. Debt per GDP by country. Japan, 237%. Whew. Venezuela, 350%. Oh yeah, look at this. Top 10 chart of doom. This looks about right. What year is this? 2023. Hot off the press. Greece, Italy. 128. The lowest. Brunei. Yeah, to the person's question about people, why don't countries just cancel each other's debt? Well, this is why. Because Brunei is doing fine. Even Afghanistan. Look at that. Oil. Actually, is Brunei? Oh, yeah, that's oil. Congo, drugs. Not sure. Palestine. Oh, UN got money. Russia, bit of everything. Botswana, is that oil? Estonia, oil. Oh, this is a nice chart. Look at this. Here's Canada. Where's Canada? Oh, Canada. 89.7 this year. They're on pace for. And the United States is way up here. Oh, look at that. Mozambique beat United States. They're a little worse. These numbers are not right. It's more than 107%. But I guess relatively wise, if they're doing it the same way, it should be correct. Yeah, another way to look at it is debt per population. So, like countries like Italy, Singapore, they're in really tough shape. because they don't have a population to sustain this. So I don't know. Solutions. Been talking about problems. Let's talk about solutions. For me, the most important parts are Social Security and Medicare, because people who actually have jobs pay into that, and that money's meant for them when they get older. So those should be the priority, and they're also the priority because they're the top things on the expenditure list. So they need to save it by raising the age limits. So you have to work longer, and then implement a general sales tax, because the demographics are shifting, so young people will have to pay more into it. That's just life. And then you're going to have to make real cuts. In other words, the expenditure number has to go down. And I'm willing, as a right-wing conservative, say, hey, you want to tax the rich more? Go ahead. It's not going to make much of a dent, especially if you're only taxing the top 1%. If you want to increase taxes, then increase taxes for everyone. If you make $60,000 a year, increase that person's tax. That's the only way you're going to make a real dent, because then you got more people. But how much can you cut spending before people revolt in the streets? I don't know, because people are stupid and emotional. I think if you even just look at the last debt ceiling deal, like the expenditure's still going up. Like, can you imagine the backlash if it went down $1? No, it has to at least keep up with inflation. Technically, if you keep it level, it is decreasing because of inflation, but I get very, very little from Social Security, even though I paid into it and I retired at 60. Well, that's because you retired at 60, Doug Dean. You're talking about federal Social Security? Yeah, Social Security, federal. My guess is you may get $1,200 a month, right? Something like that. I paid so much into Social Security, I think I'm on pace for $4,200 a month in Social Security. But I really don't think I'm going to get it by the time I retire. I mean, and for $4,200 a month, that's good poker money. I want my poker money. Less than $1,200? Why don't you just tell us how much you make from your Social Security? It's no big secret. It's somewhere between $0 and $4,000 a month. That I'm sure of. Much less than that. How do you live? You got your own little nest egg. You got your dividend money coming in from your stock market stuff. Is that it? Or are you out on the street with a tin can saying, we'll work for food. We'll do psychology for food. Good question. When will the U.S. debt actually matter? I can answer that for you very precisely. It matters when the interest payments on the debt start supplanting the payments on other line items. For example, Right now, the interest on the debt monthly is 61 billion, and Social Security is 116. Can you imagine if our debt keeps going exponential, and if inflation does not get under control and interest rates have to actually continue to go up, that $61 billion a month in interest payment could crowd out the Social Security payments. At that point, the country's over. It's done. I mean, the country's not over, but it's like, at that point, it's financial ruin. A country cannot afford to spend. Imagine your biggest line item in your personal household. Oh, leftists hate it when I say compare a government to a household. But what's your biggest payment? Your mortgage, right? Let's say you have a $2,000 a month mortgage, but the interest on your car payment is $2,100. Interest on your car payment is $2,100. You're not going to survive. Yeah, Mitesh, that's a possibility. Basically, take some of the profits out of Pfizer, right? Thanks for hanging out, guys. Have a great day.